please feel free to do so via the join button on the homepage of my channel. If you enjoy this vid, don't forget to click like,
What's going on, y'all?
subscribe. That would be very much appreciated.
Coming back with y'all with another
Let's
Borderlands
get
gameplay.
into this here, water sign. So, as I was laying down the cards, the present energy, the first card that sort of fell out, and I wanted to keep was the Tower card. So it tells me that there is a big shake-up that's happening in your life at this present time, and you're sort of a bit of.
I've gotten a little bit into astrology.
You're sort of thrown into the deep end. There's possibly been a big life change in your love relationships, and you know things seem a bit different. Maybe you're jumping into.
So we're checking out some tarot readings for
maybe
Pisces.
You're coming out of a relationship after a long time. The Tower card is a bit of turbulence. So right now you're in a present energy where you feel there's instability around you. It's a little bit chaotic, but try and keep your head above water and sort of go with the flow and see what happens. The Tower card can also indicate that right now you're in an energy where you just want to enjoy yourself. Okay, it can be a bit destructive, possibly irresponsible here. But eventually I feel the next card that's coming up with that Nine of Wands, eventually you're going to start to put your guard up a little bit more. So at this time, there may be someone taking advantage, and you're sort of playing along with it. You know, you're not really engaging too much. You're not really falling in love. You're sort of keeping, maybe you're a distance towards someone here with the Nine of Wands. But eventually you'll come to a stage where you'll feel more protective about who you give yourself to, who you give your time to, who you spend with, because you know that your time, your energy, your heart, your spirituality, it's all very precious. And you'll only be giving it to the people that deserve you. Water signs. So I feel like the walls are going to come up and you'll be more guarded, more selective, more picky, and you'll see the people that are truly, truly valuable in your life and the people that you truly want to engage in a relationship with. The next card over is the High Priestess, so ultimately you're going to get a little bit bored here, water signs. Ultimately you're going to want more out of your life. You feel like there's a bigger reason, there's a bigger purpose, there's something that's calling you in your love life. For a lot of you, there's a pregnancy potentially that'll come up during that time, either falling pregnant or getting someone pregnant. It may be planned or unplanned, but it can be like a mother kind of energy with the High Priestess. It's also a very powerful partnering up. So you might start to receive signs from the universe that the person you're supposed to be with will either show up in your
30K,
life,
Jesus.
hear from them. Maybe you'll get repetitive angel numbers. You'll get signs, symbols, and synchronicities as to where you belong and who you belong with. But I feel like at that stage with the High Priestess, you're going to be wanting more, and then eventually I see you following through with that and going after what it is that you want. A strong family energy here coming up around you. So by that time, you could very well be meeting someone who has children, or you could be starting a family, maybe even prior to engagement, marriage, or like a serious long-term relationship. The notion for family and children is going to be really important here for you. If that's not the case, family approval, family blessing.
Think Slaughterhouse.
With that Ten of Pentacles,
what is this?
You in a creation stage by that time. So this is very powerful. You're either wanting to be more calm in your life, you're wanting familiarity by this stage. You know, you want to come home to that person.
Is it DLC or something? What is this?
You know, you want that familiarity. You want to create a home. You want that stability. You're going to be craving it more and more. And a lot of you might find it in, it's almost like it's going to be right under your nose. Interesting that the Three of Cups is here because it's telling me that you may find your lover through a friendship.
Can you survive the bandit circle of slaughter? Sure.
Someone that you've known for a long time, or someone that you're in friendship levels with. It can also indicate that the people in your life are going to be very important. You know, you're going to walk away from friends, from loved ones, maybe even past relationships where you don't feel like people have your best interest at heart. You're going to walk away and sort of do away with
I'll keep it in your best interest.
New friends and a new social circle, especially because you'll want to couple up.
I'll keep it best interest.
You're going to have a better crowd to hang out with.
I'll keep it best interest. I'm just gonna forget about the crits, bro.
Some of you might be seeing a visa, you're getting a partnership, there's some sort of legal documentation with the Hierophant for this connected to a relationship. It may be signing a lease, it may be family together. business. So some of them may be starting a business with someone or in a romance with someone that you work with. This person could even be married or taken, possibly even separated. Some ladies can also you might be married and Vietnamese, so marriage is very painful, but just as likely that it happened too quickly, or it happened too soon, or maybe they weren't necessarily ready. So they might be a very short-lived sort of official situation, short-lived visa, short-lived lease. And it's important not to rush the love situation here because that's when we can get ourselves into a bit of a pickle with water signs. So that's something that you need to be careful of. But I do see you having love by that stage because you have the Knight of Cups. So I obviously see you investing in a person, investing in a relationship, one where you're very happy and one that keeps you on your toes. People really like that because no 2 days are the same with this person. It's almost like a wild roller coaster ride. You're going to be so happy. You're going to be very happy with what you have here. And then the next card I see is the King of Wands. So there might be a big move on the cards here. You might talk when some of you are moving across oceans and seas to be with your special person. Some of you are relocating. This could be entering into a long distance relationship.
Jibber Jabber, you're looking cute today. Thank you, Jibber Jabber. You're looking especially cute.
You'll be really wanting it. So some of you are going to do long distance relationship. At that stage, there may be someone else that comes into your life. Maybe someone from
Like the title says, we're just continuing
it could be someone
Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, but I found a side mission that we're gonna do. It's only a few thousand XP, but it's pretty good money, so why not? How am I still only done with one wave?
So thank you again everyone for tuning in. It does mean a lot. Don't forget to drop a like, share, subscribe.
And I said this earlier, but I got a little bit into
Hello Pisces, welcome to this reading.
astrology
We're going to
yesterday.
be taking a look at the career and financial energy for the
I decided
sign
to listen
of
to a bit of-
Pisces for the month of April.
Is that
Now,
what we
Pisces-
stream? Although tarot readings, I'm not really a big fan of. I'm using the Firehawk shield, the one you get from Lilith, one of her missions. What's your star sign, Jibber Jabber? Or your zodiac sign? Nah, star sign? I'm pretty sure it's star sign. Capricorn, huh? Alright. Capricorn and love. Let's see. No tarot readings, please. Let's see. Okay, let's go with Capricorn, Sun, and Love. Traits, expectations, and fears.
Capricorn, Sun sign.
This is by Modern
Capricorn,
Cosmic
December 22nd
Astrology.
through January 19th. These are the goats.
The goats.
Now,
Hey, you're a
when
goat.
you
Jibber
think of
Jabber, let's go.
Capricorn, I want you to think of an earthy individual. What does that mean? So when you're earthy, that means the earth is something you can see. You touch it, taste it,
You eat it.
make something out of it. That's earth. It's here, practical. It's in the sensory reality that we experience here in this three-dimensional world. This three-dimensional
Do you taste
space.
dirt, Jibber Jabber?
Capricorn is like the king of this place. This is a sign ruled by Saturn. Saturn traditionally is Kronos, the god of time. Kronos also is the father who eats his children because, as you know,
What?
the mother births us and introduces us to this mortal world. Thanks, Mom. And then that also means she kills us through introducing us to our father,
What?
Kronos, right?
Crazy.
Eventually eat us, gobble, Yeah. Okay. So Capricorn types are serious folks, practical folks. Even if you've got a fun Capricorn, there's a quality to them that realizes the
Can I get a
realities of
wave
life.
2,
This
please?
is why with business they're good at creating a plan, working a plan, planning your work, working your plan. Okay, that's Capricorn. They're practical. They're here. They realize the vicissitudes of life, and they're willing to plan
I failed the mission.
accordingly. Now, with love and romance,
An ascension fanatic? What is an
sun signs
ascension
have to do
fanatic?
with, you know,
Ascension?
practicality.
The
It's
zombies map? Dude, I love that map too,
cold,
bro.
detached energy. Capricorn
I'd say
is
I'm more of a
like
moon
cold,
fanatic,
detached energy.
but
It is
you
one
know,
that is focused
I
on
respect
business. It's
your
all
map
business,
picks.
all right? So you're going to look at the rest of this chart, unless you're also a Capricorn. And remember, your sun sign is how you sort of operate your life. Right?
Forget
So
the
you
side
could ask
mission.
someone
Let's
who's
just go
quite
to the main
emotional,
mission.
sweet and loving, but they're Capricorn sun. They've got a Capricorn sun. He has a Cancer moon. Great businessman.
Oh God, excuse me.
Making it work, but his heart is really soft and sweet. He's very tender and loving to the people.
I still got to do out of body
And
experience.
so,
Nah, forget that.
you know, your sun sign is how you
That one's
outwardly
kind of hard. I'll go back for that
operate
one.
and express your ego. So in a love relationship, Capricorns are the types, because they're Earth, they're here to build something. They are not interested in dating just to kind of screw around. You'd have to have a lot of air signs or air energy or Uranian energy on that sun or moon to make this person who's really flighty. For the most part, Capricorn, they're wanting to build something. So in relationship, they're quite traditional. Their ultimate end game is they want a partnership. They want with someone who is excellent. They have a high standard. They are looking for, you know, if you look at the birth chart, when you look at the zodiac, how it naturally falls on the wheel, you've got Capricorn at the very top, that 10th house. That's the Capricorn house in Western astrology, the 10th house. It's different in Vedic. I mean, it's shaped differently, but anyway. So 10th house there at the top, and this is a cardinal house. This is the house that has to do with how we appear in the world around us. So status is a thing that's important to Capricorns. Even if you've got a pretty, like, it depends on their other, obviously things on their other planets, where the other planets are placed, but they'll be interested in status, whether it's nice clothing or a nice home or a job that's important or they're seen as important, or doing something that's serious work. There's a discernment and a defining quality to Capricorn that they will apply to high function Capricorns. You've got someone who is focused.
High function
There's
Capricorn.
ambition there. There's a loyalty to Capricorn. 10th house is an earth sign. It's a
God.
nature.
I died so fast.
It'll be pickier though about the friends that they'll let in.
Let's see, Ascension.
Pure Capricorn. Remember, this is pure Capricorn. And can be within female Capricorn. Sometimes you can see like a bitchiness or like a
What the
"Hey,
fuck?
It's not good enough for me" kind of a thing, which is great.
That shit sounds pretty out there, my guy. Way more out there than
they have
astrology.
what they're looking for, and they're not going to waste their time going down roads that are inefficient and practical. They desire intimacy as well with a partner, because they're so much of Capricorn is in this sort of serious, sometimes cynical place. A partner who has a sweetness, who's very real and practical and here and rounded, but sweet, really appeals to a Capricorn, especially a Capricorn. I mean, it's like goes both directions, but they're traditional and conservative, and so Capricorn male many times will like a female that is feminine, and Capricorn's quite masculine energy. It's like the general. It's the goat, but I think of it as the general. Someone in charge. They've got a mission. They've got
Go to the general.
crystallized plan in their head.
Save online.
Bringing it from their brain out into the world around us. And so
For a great low rate, you can get on.
leaders.
For a great low rate, you can get online. Go to the general and save some time. There we go.
Bureaucracy that creates the rules, and this could even be like a mom, a stay-at-home mom. She would be quite have her idea of how things should be run in her home, and be kind of systematized and organized with the way that she would run her home. That would be. They're also solid and grounded. There's a grounded practicality. Again, it's that earthy dutifulness. Comes in Capricorn as well. With a low function Capricorn,
You ain't a
you've
basic
got
bitch.
someone there is a discernment
show.
there, and there's an understanding of quality, whether it's a quality of a human being, quality of a product, quality of the way a business is being structured and run. They can see when something does not meet their standards of what it should be meeting. Okay, they're the rule makers many times. They're the ones that have a hard.
Let's see then. Cristo or Cristo or Christo. Christo's avatar. Oh god. This guy looks pretty out there as well, man. Is there a specific video I should watch? Let's see. Doesn't have any home videos. Yeah, I don't know, man. This seems like a bit of a rabbit hole I'm not too ready for, but we're gonna take it down anyways. Let's see. What is spirituality for beginners? Self-improvement
This is how we are.
of the actualized soul.
This is usually how we are, right? People in general in the world, you get treated that way. I get treated that way. People, even strangers. Wow, in TikTok they were like just being hateful, and not everyone. I mean, there was always a percentage of them being bad, naughty. You know, that's their free will. They choose that. Some of you choose darkness, or jealousy, or hatred, or some negative, experience. Why have a negative emotion?
Finally used the trans murder.
Emotions to try out. Why not try joy? Why not try some grace, mindfulness? Why not try some love? Why not try? It's like you are beautiful. You're wonderful. You're amazing.
Is this the intro?
Basically, you've been tricked and you've been lied to, and it's like, wow.
Or he's.
So now you see darkness.
That's just how he's going into the video.
Oh, dear beloved ones, there's light. Too. There's still.
Cause I feel like he's just ranting right now, but
here
I need a little bit of
in the spiritual war. So we're
context. That's what he's talking about.
Light and love, and we are God's sovereign, free. You are God. Say that to yourself 3 times in a row. Say, I am God. I am sovereign. I am free. So you realize that. You realize that Trinity. Okay? You are God, you are sovereign, you are free. And you will be protected. It's a talisman. It's an amulet. It gives you power. It gives you protection. Realize it. Become it.
Is this guy Native American? I guess I could kind of see that.
Your unity consciousness, Christ consciousness. You're all together, and you can connect to that brilliance, that majesty, that cool. So, because it's right there, part of you, part of this DNA, part of the field around you, the aura they call it. It's all, imagine at 360, all around you. There's this energy in these different colors, and those colors are based on your thoughts, not what you're thinking. So this is important. These energies, these colors are what are making your reality. And you keep changing that. You keep shifting those colors. Your thoughts, you shift them into bad colors, bad wavelengths that take you into negative thoughts and actions. Well, like I said before, you're casting a spell on yourself, like jinxing yourself. It's going to be like something stuck to you, attached to your fields. You have this idea about you. You have this bad ideas, all in your aura. All these darkness. This,
we have 2 viewers now. Welcome to the stream.
These little vampires, these little leeches. They're consuming you. So you are light. You will shine, brilliant light. You're all 360 right. Imagine you raging like it's like a plasma. This plasma light. Pure, bright, cosmic light. You are this light. You're just standing in the light.
Yeah, I'm a little lost as to what this guy's talking about. Let's see if he has an introductory video we can watch. Let's go to his playlists. Let's see. Spiritual Awakening Ascension, Secret Mysteries of Ascension, Atlantis, and Egypt. Hell no, I'm not watching a 3-hour video on that. You know, I'm just gonna look up with you. Let's see, what is it called? Ascension. Ideology? Is that what you should call it? What is Ascension? Your Ascension journey. Oh, and then the second video is Conspiracy Theory of Everything 9, Ascension. We could watch that afterwards. Any hoomst? Any houmst?
The term ascension has become increasingly more popular as more individuals are having spiritual awakenings. So today I'm going to be explaining what ascension is and what that term means. How the ascension process has been depicted throughout the ages is of an upward trajectory, almost as if a levitation into a heavenly realm. And so that served us at one point. But as we're coming into a more mature form of these esoteric concepts, what ascension truly is the awareness of our conscious evolution. When we are aware that we are evolving, that is the ascension process in a nutshell. So to further expand on that definition of ascension being the conscious awareness of our own evolution, ascension is the journey from base consciousness to unity consciousness. Unity consciousness is a property of the fifth dimension. So when we're talking about the ascension process, we're actually anchoring into the physical third dimension, higher dimensional states of consciousness. These higher dimensional states of consciousness, we could just say fifth dimensional consciousness and beyond. But what these fifth dimensional and beyond states of consciousness do once they're anchored into the third dimensional reality, they create a complete paradigm shift to this version of reality. So we're still inside a third dimensional form, but with a multi-dimensional consciousness. And what this multi-dimensional consciousness is going to do over a long incremental period of time is shift dimensions. When we are going to experience a complete dimensional shift depends solely on what timeline we are on. Because if we're looking for collective outcomes to produce that dimensional shift, it's going to take a longer amount of time. If we focus on our own experience, we're going to catch a wave to a timeline that's going to have things just synchronistically appear in such a manner that a dimensional shift is far more probable within this lifetime. However, looking at things from them needing to occur in this lifetime is also a hindering factor, and that's one that's not going to totally allow us to align with the timeline where that actually would be the case. So a large theme inside the ascension process is the transmutation of our physical body into a more crystalline structure. This is going to be a transmutation process taking place at a cellular level, even at a mitochondria level. And what this is doing is it's transmuting the density inside our physical structure into a higher vibrating structure vehicle. If you'd specifically like to know about the physical
this
structure
shit is
of
way
let me know in the
beyond me. And kind of sounds like bullshit. Not gonna cap. Sorry, Jib Jabs. But I'm not digging it. So you know what? Let's put on the most twisted case you ever heard documentary by Iwu Crime Stories.
Do you have the weapons in your room with you when they found you?
Just a gun.
So you weren't trying to get away with it?
The gun was to be given to somebody to clean and hide.
Who are you going to give it to?
I can't tell you that. Enough people's lives have been ruined.
You've told Terry that. So someone else knew this was going to happen.
And his name has never been mentioned anywhere.
It's It started out like any other southern teenage romance. The pastor's daughter found a bad boy that she just couldn't resist. He was a couple years older and didn't quite put her dad's mind at ease, but his little girl was happy. At 16 years old, it was expected for Erin Caffey to have a rebellious phase, but not quite like this.
911, what's the address of your emergency?
This is Tommy Gaston. I've got a man that's been shot.
It seemed like a relatively normal evening in Alba, Texas, but Tommy Gaston was in for the surprise of his life when his neighbor, Terry Caffey, crawled to his house barely clinging to life. The scene was horrific. In the distance, his house was engulfed by flames. Tommy immediately called 911.
Alright, sir, I have a few questions that I need to ask you, okay? Is he conscious?
Yes.
And is he breathing?
Yes.
When did this happen?
I don't know, just a little bit ago. And we've also got a house on fire out here.
And the house is on fire? Is the person who shot him still nearby, sir?
I think I was listening to this earlier.
Right here at me.
Hey, you shot him?
No, I didn't.
You never use
I
flag?
don't
It's honestly
know
really
any
helpful.
more details. I've got to hang up and help him.
Sir, I have to ask you these questions. Okay, they're en route. Is there any serious bleeding?
Yes, he's bleeding.
Okay, is he completely awake?
Yes, he's awake.
Makes like 4 shot
what
enemies,
part
2
of the body
shot.
was injured?
I don't know, but I've got to go.
Sir, I need to know where he was shot. I need to know where he was shot
I
at.
don't know.
First responders rushed to the scene, where they found that the truth of the incident was much darker and more twisted than they ever could have imagined. It wasn't just a man suffering from gunshot wounds, but a man who had also just watched his entire family be killed.
Jesus.
This was no random break-in. Terry knew the assailant, and he made that clear to police.
Ah, you
The
fuck.
Caffey family was the poster of a wholesome suburban family with Christian values. Terry and his
Wholesome
wife
with
Penny
Christian
had 3
values,
children
so-
together. 16-year-old Erin was their eldest and their only daughter.
100.
The boys, Matthew and Tyler, were 13 and 8. Terry was a pastor, and the Caffeys were very involved with their church. Erin sang in the church choir and often sang solos. It's been said that Erin's voice would sometimes move the church crowd to tears. Erin's rebellious phase manifested in the form of her 18-year-old boyfriend, Charlie Wilkinson. As any parent would be, Erin's parents were slightly apprehensive of him at first. Terry recalls the first time Charlie was invited over for dinner, where he was immediately left with a bad impression. Terry greeted him by saying, "You must be Charlie," to which he responded, "And you are?" Despite the rude response, this didn't initially sound too many alarms, and Charlie continued to join the Caffeys for dinner, even attending church with them. Although this could seem like just a rude response or a rather benign example of defiance, it's actually a significant indication of Charlie's antisocial traits. At 18 years old, and given the fact that he was
And you
meeting his
are?
girlfriend's parents for the first time,
Jeez.
any typical teenager would have been more careful and more respectful when responding to Terry's greeting. The fact that Charlie said, "And you are," indicates that he likely sees himself at an equal level to Erin's father. Plus, it's certainly not a friendly greeting that you would give to someone you're trying to impress. It's possible that Erin could have contributed to Charlie's confidence and lack of respect. It's possible that Erin had been speaking poorly of her family to Charlie. This could be another reason why Charlie arrived with such an arrogant attitude. As time went
Maybe.
on, Terry and Penny noticed a change in Erin's behavior. She was closed off to everyone except Charlie. They would often seclude themselves from the rest of the churchgoers after service, and sometimes engage in public displays of affection that were seen as inappropriate for a Sunday
Ooh,
service.
PDA,
The parents tried
PDA,
to put a stop
baby.
to it by limiting the time the couple spent together.
Get that
They
shit
set
out my
rules,
Christian
such as Charlie
server,
hanging out
dog.
at their house so that they would be there to supervise. He was to leave by 9 p.m. on
Will
school
not be
nights, and
having
Erin
this
could use her
tomfoolery.
cell phone to talk to him until 10 p.m. This didn't slow their quickly intensifying
Okay.
relationship, however, and Charlie bought Erin a promise ring. The fact that Erin was closed off to everyone except Charlie can be considered pretty typical of her age. Adolescents can become obsessed with a boyfriend or girlfriend
Get
and can
flag,
act like
boy.
there's no one
Come on,
else in the
boy, get
world besides
flag.
that person. It's strange how no other behavioral descriptors are given about Erin from her parents that indicate antisocial personality
Constructors not
disorder.
get flagged?
Maybe
Oh,
Erin
God.
showed more concerning behaviors, but her parents may have minimized or dismissed them. When it was clear that the relationship would continue to cause problems as long as it went on, Penny put her foot down and said the two had to stop seeing each other. Their intentions were to keep their daughter safe, but they never could have imagined the danger that was on the horizon. The night that Terry crawled to his neighbor's house, he had seen things that were straight out of a horror movie. The Caffeys were sound asleep when Terry and Penny's bedroom door swung open with a bang. Several
Wait, so
more
what,
loud bangs
what
followed.
happened? Why did
Open
why did
problems
she
as
want them
lies or
to
for
stop?
Maybe Erin showed more concerning parents, that indicate antisocial. It's strange how no other behavioral. There's no one else in the world can become obsessed. Everyone except Charlie can be considered pretty typical of her age. Adolescents can be clarifying. Would use her cell phone to talk to, supervise together. Sunday service.
Okay, so this is the weird behavior.
The churchgoers after service. Everyone except Charlie. They would often seclude
themselves after service, participate in PDA.
Stop to it by limiting the time the couple spent together. They set rules such as Charlie hanging out at their house so that they would be there to supervise. He was to leave by 9 p.m. on school nights, and Erin could use her cell phone to talk to him.
What a strict ass family, Jesus.
Until 10 p.m. This didn't slow their quickly intensifying relationship.
I'm a Pisces jibber jabber. Lay fish sign, water sign. Is it a fish? Let me see. Pisces images. I really don't know what that's supposed to be. It's like the Chanel kind of, but you know, it does kind of look like the Chanel symbol. Chanel. No, it literally looks like the Chanel symbol. What the hell? Okay, now Coco. Chanel. That's pretty cool. But it's kind of like the Chanel symbol with the line through it. Is it supposed to be fish? Pisces. Animal? I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be fish. Although on this one, it's showing Pisces as a crow, which I don't think is right. I do think I relate to the Pisces very much. I feel like I'm fairly observant when it comes to emotional states and
however, and Charlie bought Erin a
understanding others
promise ring. The fact that Erin was closed off to everyone except Charlie can be considered.
I also try to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Adolescents can become obsessed with a boyfriend or girlfriend and can act like there's no one else in the world besides that person.
I do feel like I get pretty passionate in relationships.
About Erin from her parents that indicate antisocial personality disorder. Maybe Erin showed more concerning behaviors, but her parents may have minimized or dismissed them. When it was clear that the relationship would continue to cause problems as long as it went on, Penny put her foot down and said the two had to stop seeing each other. Their intentions were to keep their daughter safe, but they never.
I am kind of like a wallflower when it comes to
the night that Terry crawled to his neighbor's
social
house,
gatherings. I just kind of
straight out of a horror movie. The Cafes were sound
lay
asleep
back and not
Terry
be part of
Penny's
like the main
bedroom door swung
conversation or
open
the
with a
main
bang.
group. I'm just kind of
Several more loud
sitting
bangs
back
followed.
and
This time,
watching what's going on.
gunshots. Bullets showered the room where they'd been sleeping.
What about,
peacefully
dude? Did you
just
move on
seconds
from
ago.
astrology because
Both Terry and Penny were shot multiple
you didn't
times.
believe it
Terry
anymore,
recognized the assailant with the gun.
or
It was
just
Aaron's boyfriend,
because
Charlie. He was
you're
accompanied by
further
his friend
down
who would later be
the
identified as
spirituality?
Charles Wade. Along with guns,
I don't
they
want
were
to say
also
rabbit hole,
carrying
but
two
basically
large swords.
spirituality
Terry
rabbit
was
hole.
lying in his
Then
bedroom,
I
unable
am.
to move, when he heard his son Matthew cry out, "Why are you doing this, Charlie?" More gunshots followed. Wade had shot Matthew in the face. The fact that swords were used adds to the horrific nature of these murders, almost like Charlie and his friend Charles Wade were enjoying the process, acting like it was the scene of a movie and they were the
I mean, I
villains.
know I was kind of
Maybe they
bitching
thought
about
of
the
themselves
parents,
as
but I
the
mean, they were
heroes.
right to. In the
Charlie
end, they
and
were
Wade
right
could have
to.
committed these murders with guns alone. Swords were unnecessary
not be trustful of the guy.
accomplish what they wanted, which displays the profoundly evil intent here, and it indicates that the two men gained some sort of
164K.
satisfaction from the process. Tyler, at only 8 years old, hid in the corner of a closet. It is unfathomable the fear that the little boy must have felt, hearing his family be brutally murdered all around him at the hands of his sister's boyfriend, knowing he would be next if they found him. Tragically, Charlie and Wade found him in the closet.
Oof.
The pair both stabbed Tyler to death with the swords. After, Charlie went back to Aaron's parents' bedroom and stabbed Penny in the neck with a sword to ensure that she died, nearly decapitating her. Once the two were sure they'd killed everyone, they set the house on fire and drove away. They never expected that Terry
Relate a
would
lot to
make it out of the
Capricorn, but
burning
you don't like
house alive.
you don't like labels on
Terry had
yourself.
been in and out of consciousness
I don't know.
during
I
this
like it.
traumatic event. Still,
I think
Terry
it's
fought for his life to make
well,
it
I
out of
don't
the
like.
house and to his neighbors.
projecting my
Everybody knew
labels
each other
onto
in
other
Alba.
people,
It wasn't long after Terry
meaning
had
I
named
don't
the
like
killer that the
telling
police
people that
tracked
I'm a
Charlie
Pisces. Like,
down.
oh,
In fact, Chief Deputy
well, you
Kurt
know,
Fisher
I
knew
am a
him well because
Pisces,
he was a friend
so
of Fisher's
that's why
son.
I did that.
On
You
his
know,
way to the crime
I
scene,
don't,
Fisher
I don't.
recognized Charlie's car where it was parked at Matthew Wade's single-wide trailer.
Well, and you know,
on his
I've
way
barely
to
gotten
the
into
crime
this,
scene.
anyways.
Matthew was
I'm going to
Charles's
try
older
not to
brother.
make it
His
a
house became the spot,
personality
where Charles and his friends
trait
could
of
crash
mine.
after a drunken night. When Fisher arrived, Matthew
Honestly,
let the
if
police
anything,
enter
it
the
feels a
home, but he couldn't
little
recall if
nice
Charlie had
to
stayed
have
the night there
a
or
little,
not. Upon
to have a
entry, the
label put
officers
on
were faced
yourself,
with a
just
mess of
to,
empty
or
beer
at least
cans and dirty
on
laundry.
myself,
Wade and his girlfriend were woken up
just
by the
because
officers
I
that
feel
were
like I have a
looking
little
for
bit more
Charlie.
clarity
While
as to who
searching
I
the home,
am.
Fisher discovered a door frame that had been covered up with a blanket. He pulled
I
back
feel
the
like I
blankets to
understand
discover
myself
Charlie
better.
lying on a mattress with a gun next to him. He had to be cautious.
It's also nice to know
Charlie
that
had just
there
slaughtered
are
an
other people
entire
out there
family. Who is to
that
say
share
that he wouldn't
similar
reach for the gun
personality
lying
traits.
next to him and shoot? Fisher asked Charlie to show him his hands and then took the teen outside and told him what had happened to the Caffey family the night before. Charlie denied any involvement, claiming he got drunk that night and fell asleep. Because he was only wearing blue jeans, officers went inside to grab Charlie a shirt and shoes. When they retrieved his clothes, they noticed blood splatters. As he was taken away in the back of a squad car, firefighters were still struggling to smother the fire that swallowed the Caffey home. Despite their efforts, the entire house burned to the ground, and the bodies were eventually recovered. As police searched the trailer, they discovered a purse with Aaron's driver's license, shell casings and ammunition, and a used condom. As an officer began to tear away at piles of clutter, he saw a pile of blonde hair peeking out of one of the piles and grabbed it, assuming that it was a doll. It was a teenage girl lying in a fetal position, facing away from the officer. The officer demanded she stand up and put her hands where he could see them, but she didn't respond at all. He recognized her from the driver's license. It was Erin. Immediately, Erin began asking where she was and saying that she couldn't remember how she got there. She claimed that she'd been drugged the night before and didn't have many details to offer police.
So,
she claimed that
let's
she
back
remembered
this video
a fire,
up.
2 men in black with swords.
You are
and
no one
drinking
and nothing.
something. After the drink, she could.
Pretty much.
This time, gunshots. Bullets showered. As time went on, Terry and Penny noticed a change in Aaron's behavior. Most of the church appropriate to range. Adolescence can become obsessed to everyone except Charlie can be considered pretty typical of her age.
So, Charlie gave the girl a promise ring.
Antisocial strange how no other behavioral descriptors are given about Aaron from her parents that indicate antisocial personality disorder. Maybe Aaron showed more concerning behaviors, but her parents may have missed as long as it went on. Penny put her foot down and said the two had to stop seeing her that was
whatever.
Laundry. At home, Fisher discovered a door frame that had been covered up with a blanket. He pulled back the blankets to discover Charlie lying on a mattress with a gun next to him. He had to be cautious. Charlie had just slaughtered an entire family. Who is to say that he wouldn't reach for the gun lying next to him and shoot? Fisher asked Charlie to show him his hands and then took the teen outside and told him what had happened to the Caffey family the night before. Charlie denied any involvement and told him next Charlie covered a girlfriend. The police Charles where it was a friend. The police. Everybody knew each other in Alba. It wasn't long after Terry had named the killer that the police tracked Charlie event house alive and drove away. They never expected that Terry would make it out of the burning house alive.
Charlie Wilkins.
Terry. They never.
Once two guys did it.
Charlie and Wade found him in the end. Must have felt years old men gained would have committed these murders, or maybe the process. Nature of these murders to you in the face. More gunshots followed. His carrying 2 large swords. Terry was Charles' boyfriend, shot multiple times. Terry just seconds ago. Several more leads were sounded to his neighbor's house. Could have imagined the danger straight burning house. Terry fought. Fisher knew him well because he was a killer that the police tracked Charlie down on his way to the crime scene. Car where it was parked at Matthew Wade's single-wide trailer on his way to the crime scene. Matthew was Charles's older brother. His house became the spot.
What the
one
heck?
Where Charles and his friends could crash after
are
a
Capricorns really
night.
that bad? What the heck?
When Fisher arrived, Matthew let the police enter the house and his friends could crash after a drunken night. When Fisher arrived, Matthew let the police enter the home, but he couldn't recall if Charlie had stayed the night there or not. Upon entry, the officers were home and could crash after a drunken
who's Fisher?
trailer.
Officer Fisher? Chief Fisher?
Kurt Fisher knew Charlie's car. Matthew was Charles's older brother. His house became the spot, one where Charles and his friends could crash after a drunken night. When Fisher arrived, Matthew let the police enter the home, but he couldn't recall if Charlie had stayed the night there or not. Upon entry, the officers were faced with a mess of empty beer cans and dirty laundry. Wade and his girlfriend were woken up by the officers that were looking for Charlie. While searching the home, Fisher discovered a door frame that had been covered up with a blanket. He pulled back the blankets to discover Charlie lying on a mattress with a gun next to him. He had to be cautious. Charlie had just slaughtered an entire family. Who is to say that he wouldn't reach for the gun lying next to him and shoot? Fisher asked Charlie to show him his hands and then took the teen outside and told him what had happened to the Caffey family the night before.
And he found him with the gun.
Charlie denied any involvement, claiming he got drunk that night and fell asleep. Because he was only wearing blue jeans, officers went inside to grab Charlie a shirt and shoes. When they retrieved his clothes, they noticed blood splatters. As he was taken away in the back of a squad car, firefighters were still struggling to smother the fire that swallowed the Caffey home. Despite their efforts, the entire house burned to the ground, and the bodies were eventually recovered. As police searched the trailer, they discovered a purse with Aaron's driver's license, shell casings and ammunition, and a used condom. As an officer began to tear away at piles of clutter, he saw a pile of blonde hair peeking out of one of the piles and grabbed it, assuming that it was a doll. It was a teenage girl lying in a fetal position.
Like, what even was this guy's problem? Did he... Was he mad because the parents made the break up, or was he like already fucked up and planning to kill them? Because it was a two-man job. I don't understand. Whatever.
When they retrieved his clothes, they noticed blood splatters.
They're taking him.
As
They found blood splatters.
A squad car. Firefighters were still struggling to smother the fire.
Taking out the
that
fire.
swallowed the Caffey home. Despite their efforts, the entire house burned to the ground, and the bodies were eventually recovered. As police searched the trailer, they discovered a purse with Aaron's driver's license, shell casings and ammunition, and a used condom. As an officer began to tear away at piles of clutter, he saw a pile of blonde hair peeking out of one of the piles.
So this is Aaron's trailer, the Caffey's trailer?
It was a doll. It was a teenage girl lying in a fetal position, facing a suit clutter. He saw it and a used the trailer. They discovered a pound, and the bodies were eventually recovered. As police searched the trailer, they discovered a purse with Aaron's driver's license.
Okay, now they're searching.
Bullet. They're both stabbed Tyler to
Charlie
death
Wilkins
with the swords.
or Charles Wade.
After Charlie went back
house,
inside
which
to
is
grab
a trailer.
Charlie a shirt
Yeah,
and shoot.
yeah, okay.
Brad was in.
And then they found her.
Of was and saying that she couldn't remember how it was Aaron.
Alright,
Immediately, Aaron began
now we're fully
asking
caught
where
up.
she was and saying that she couldn't remember how she got there. She claimed that she'd been drugged the night before and didn't have many details to offer police. She claimed that she remembered a fire, 2 men in black with swords, and drinking something. After the drink,
2 men
she
in black
couldn't
with
remember
swords.
anything,
Jeez.
and her memories of earlier in the night were also blurry. Police felt sorry for Erin and praised her strength in light of an event as traumatic as the loss of most of her family. However, as the story unraveled down at the station, it would come to light that this was not the case. Terry was certain he already knew Charlie's motive. He wanted revenge because Penny had forbidden Aaron from seeing him. Charlie's version of the story, however, was not
Aaron,
but of his willingness to do anything for the girl he loved. He claimed that
was
he
Aaron
had
in on
killed
it?
the Caffey
Ooh,
family
the
for
girl was in on
revenge.
it. I'm calling
He
it.
did because Aaron asked him to.
Yes, sir. Knew it.
At the station, Charlie was extremely forthcoming. Although he initially wouldn't name his accomplice, eventually he cracked. It was Charles Wade.
Yes, and his name has never been mentioned anywhere.
If you're truly sorry about what happened, do you not think that to actually say who this other person was would show him that you were you really meant what you said?
I will tell you that he was the original person that was supposed to do it.
Were you going to tell me who it was?
No,
No.
because he had nothing to do with it, and there's no way he could have stopped it.
Like I said, this whole interview has been about you apologizing for what you did.
Well, I did.
I did.
I'm very sorry for what I did.
When Charlie says, "I'm very sorry for what I did," he sounds sincere. But his tone seems
I'm
matter
very
of
sorry
fact,
for
or
what I
almost
did.
like he is sorry. But he was going to do this no matter what. Like it was inevitable that he was going to commit these murders.
But surely this would show that you're completely sorry by making the people that could have stopped it pay a price for it. I know the story, but I just think that if this interview carries any weight, if what you've told me is true, that you genuinely are sorry, I mean, you've gone in, you clearly find it difficult talking about this person who was looking after the gun for you, who was asked to do this originally, who backed out, who knew you were going to do it, and yet didn't say anything about it.
Promise was made, and I can't break it. I still can't tell you this guy's name.
It's interesting how people with antisocial personality will commit horrific acts, but then claim to stand by principles like keeping a promise. As Charlie says, a promise was made and I can't break it. However, in this circumstance, Charlie may have said this as an excuse to avoid disclosing the name. Charlie did, however, seem to speak with conviction, and oddly enough, loyalty. It's also very possible that Charlie was trying to make himself sound righteous, or like he was trying to do the right thing in front of the investigator. Wade had agreed to help his friend carry out the murders because he'd been promised $2,000 by Aaron and Charlie.
Bro,
$2,000 was in a lockbox in the Caffey home. Wade was easily convinced,
Would you
intending
commit
to use this money for
4
court
murders
fees
for
to assist in trying
$2,000?
to gain custody of his daughter. Contrary to his plan, murdering 4 people and setting a house on fire would prove to not be the best approach. During their interrogations, the boys were extremely forthcoming about their acts, and even led the police to the evidence that they had left under the bridge and in the river. According to the boys, Aaron, Wade, and Charlie were driven to the Caffey home by Wade's girlfriend, Bobby Johnson. Wade claims that Bobby didn't know of their plan, but insisted on tagging along. They weren't at the Caffey home for long before they were scared away by the family's dog, who immediately started barking loudly. Aaron was not going to let this be the end of her plan. She called Charlie repeatedly in the late hours of the night, coercing him to come back and kill her parents. She said she would bring the dog inside so it didn't wake anyone up, but the boys were still hesitant, so Aaron snuck out with them. Bobby drove the 3 of them to a cemetery where they sat for an hour and planned the murders of the Caffey family. Charlie said he attempted to reason with Aaron multiple times, suggesting she run away instead. She insisted that she wanted them permanently gone, and not just her parents. She wanted her little brothers killed too. She said they were annoying, and they picked on her. The series of events described show the severity of Aaron's and Charlie's antisocial personality disorder, because they extensively thought through their plan. This case was certainly not a heat-of-the-moment or anger-fueled murder. The murders were very carefully thought out by 2 people who have no empathy, and likely no conscience. Aaron was apparently not disturbed by the thought of making her family suffer and putting their parents and 2 brothers through such a horrible experience. An execution-style murder. It's very likely that Aaron either had a deep, long-standing hatred for her family.
I mean,
or her
probably
psychopathy
they
is so
seemed
severe that she
very.
truly just wanted them out of her way. and had no issue
I mean,
with
yeah, they have
disposing
their
of
values, they're
lives of her
conservative,
parents
whatever,
and
but
brothers.
they seem very,
This is
very,
likely
very,
antisocial personality at its
like
most severe,
way too involved in their
because
life,
even the
my
worst
guy.
psychopaths in history will tend to go after
But
strangers.
I mean, hey,
Those who plan and engage in not only
white
murder,
people, am I
but
right?
murder carried out in such a brutal
Money
manner
fucks people
towards their
up,
own
pathetically,
family,
honestly,
are really
bruh.
the most dangerous types of
$2,000,
sociopaths. The term
$2,000.
menace to society is really made for individuals like Aaron.
What are you gonna buy with
because if she could plan
$2,000?
something like this to happen to her own
A
family,
used car?
imagine how horrific
A used
her behavior towards
1982
others she
car?
didn't know well could have potentially been.
Nah,
According
that
to
would
their
probably be
plan,
cheaper.
Wade was
Like
to
a
kill them while Charlie
1990
carried out the
something
murders of
car?
her parents. They burst into the house with a .22 caliber pistol and 2 samurai swords, almost successfully carrying out their plan if Terry
What's
hadn't
this blob
survived.
right here? Is there
What
something
seemed to
down there?
affect Charlie
Something
the
up
most
there.
about that night was being ordered by Wade to make the kids come out of the locked room they were hiding in.
There, no way I can
Matthew
get up
attempted
there.
to fight Charlie off, but
Over
was shot
there?
by Wade immediately. Charlie said that he couldn't handle murdering Tyler, although he did stab him once.
This is Detective Richard Allman, Rains County Sheriff's Office. Present in the room with me is
Brandon Breimer?
you're friends with both of them.
Yes, sir. I'm friends with all 4 of the people involved.
Okay. Okay, did you come voluntarily?
Yes, sir.
We did not call you, correct?
No, sir.
You came of your own free will.
Yes, sir. To tell
look
you
at that
some
fire
information
rate.
that we thought you might need.
What information is that?
Well, I got a collect phone call from Mr. Charlie Wilkinson. It's kind of foggy, really, because, I mean, it's just so upsetting.
So yesterday evening you get a phone call from Charlie calling you collect from the jail.
Yes, sir.
And he's crying and upset, is that correct?
wait.
Is that what you're telling me?
I'm alive.
Yes, sir. He was crying the
Wait, what the
entire
heck?
Although this can be viewed as remorse, it could also simply be a show of emotion because he was caught and was in jail. Although Charlie sounded remorseful in the interrogation, it's difficult to be certain about his actual remorse. People with antisocial personality disorder will often cry and claim to be regretful once they're caught.
Crying the entire time. And what
Yeah,
was he
I don't
upset
think we can
about?
go back up there,
about
so.
everything, I
Geronimo!
guess. Crime, mostly, I reckon. We talked to, I asked him how
I'm
he
alive.
was doing.
Can I
asked
go
him
down
if
here?
he
What's
did
going
the
on here?
crime, And he gave me some details.
Yeah, I don't think
What
so.
did he say when you asked him if he did the crime?
Well, I said, Charlie, this is what I said. I said, Charlie, did you pull the trigger? I have to know. He said, yes, I shot the mom and the dad, but I did not shoot the kids. He said he couldn't pull the trigger on the little kids.
Charlie described to Brandon how Charles had to finish killing Aaron's parents and he had to go outside because he could not kill the children. However, this phone call could have been strategically planned by Charlie to try to claim his innocence since he was already in jail, and he knew he would likely be facing serious charges.
Had had you ever had conversations with Charlie before about any of this?
About a month ago, he was telling me that his girlfriend was thinking about it. Charlie was telling me, I asked him, you know, he came over and it was just a typical hangout night. I said, what's new, Charlie? And he said, well, Erin's talking about murdering her parents. And I was like, no way. He was like,
No
yeah,
way.
she is. And I was like, she's trying to get you to do it? He was like, yeah, but I can't, dude. They got 2 little kids in that house. I was like, I know. If you ever need help, just come to me, Charlie. I'll keep you out of trouble. But sounds like it didn't work. I asked him
seems like it
why
didn't
he
work.
did it and what he was thinking when he did it, and he just never really gave me a flat-out answer on that.
Charlie and Erin had plenty of time to show real remorse as they were planning these murders. There was a span of time where they could have realized what they were doing was horrific. But the thing with sociopaths is that they really only focus on achieving what they want. The means to the end is simply just a transaction. In Charlie and Erin's case,
My
it seems like it was
PC,
just
I actually got a
puzzle
pretty
they
good deal
had
on
to
my
piece together
PC.
So they could plan the events in a way that would allow them to succeed in committing the murders.
It was a custom build. I just asked one of my friends to build one for me, and he was,
I think Friday night. But they were,
for him, since
happy as
it was during the pandemic and he didn't really have anything to do, he gave me a bit of a discount just because he wanted to do a project. And in total, it
said he saw
ended up
Charlie
costing
before the
me
murders, and he described him as happy-go-lucky.
around
It's possible that his
400
attitude was
with
this way because the murders were already planned and
keyboard,
everything
mouse,
was
and
set to take
everything.
place. Brandon
But
said
for the
same
computer
about Charles
itself,
and Bobby.
I
This is
paid
very
only about
odd, to say the least,
300.
given that this group was about to enter a home,
I'm
kill a
pretty happy about it,
family,
honestly.
and then burn the
Although
house
it didn't
down.
come with the graphics
Aaron
card,
and Charlie
it came
were
with a
eager
really
to
powerful
materialize their plan, and Charles
CPU.
and Bobby may have been excited to get the
But I've
money that
since
was
gotten a
promised to them
graphics card,
for
so we're chilling.
participation. Wade recalled Erin being elated when they
So
returned to the
actually,
car with her packed
and the graphics card
suitcase.
cost me like
Once she
600
had their
actually, or something
confirmation
like
her
that.
family
So
was gone,
actually,
she gave them the combination to
in
the
total,
lockbox
we're
that
at about
contained the money.
$900,
They
almost
also took all the money
$1,000.
from Terry and
So
Penny's
there we
wallets,
go.
which added
Yeah,
up
that
to
seems about right.
$400. They then set furniture and blankets on fire with pocket lighters, watching
was
the
it
house go up in
600?
flames as they
Or
pulled
I think it
away
was-
in Bobby's car.
I honestly don't remember how
Erin
much my graphics card
shouted,
was.
"Holy shit, that was awesome," and told them how relieved she felt. During his interrogation, Wade said that Erin was as happy as a kid on Christmas. They went to the river where they tossed Erin's
Yeah, it was
suitcase,
really
the
nice.
swords, and bloody boots in a
I mean,
box.
my
Their
computer
plan was
does
to come
crash
back
every
for
now
these
and then. I
items.
mean, just last night I was
Finally,
trying to
Bobby
stream
dropped
and
Erin
it
and
crashed in
Charlie
the middle
off
of
at
it.
Matthew Wade's trailer.
And before
This
that, I was
Sunday,
trying to
their
watch
completed
TV with
mission
my
was
friends,
sleeping together.
and it kept crashing.
When Bobby was questioned, she pleaded ignorance to
So
the whole
how's it?
thing. She finally cracked
It's-
when
it's
she
a give
learned
and
that the
take.
police already had the 2 boys in their custody. She confessed to everything. While Wade,
Alright,
Charlie,
pause.
and
What are
Bobby
we
were all
waiting for
telling
now?
stories that corroborated with each other,
I mean, what are we
Erin was
listening
still
to now?
sticking to her story that she didn't remember anything, but the results of her toxicology report had just come in. There were no drugs found in her system,
Get
and no
wrecked.
signs of smoke inhalation.
Get
Back
freaking
at the
wrecked.
hospital, Terry was recovering
Get
despite
called
all
out.
odds
I'm
being
gonna go get a
against
water
him.
bottle. I'll be back
He
real
had
quick.
fractured both of his cheekbones, broken his nose, and suffered from nerve damage in his right arm. When detectives came to talk to him, he asked about his daughter's involvement in the deaths of their family. They said one earth-shattering sentence that would make Terry's suffering so much heavier. Her involvement was great. He immediately cried out in despair. It was inconceivable that his sweet little girl could have done something so evil. Upon being told he could go home, he broke down again. He had nothing. He didn't have a home to go to, or anyone to come home to. He stayed with his sister as he continued to live out the nightmare that had become his reality. Erin was placed under arrest but denied her involvement through tears. Because she was a minor, she couldn't be immediately questioned. This small blonde 16-year-old was not the suspect they had imagined, was the mastermind behind this gruesome plot to have her family killed. She wouldn't agree to speaking with investigators, choosing to write a statement instead. Still, she didn't budge from her story. Erin was placed in a juvenile detention center where she was held on murder charges. Terry visited Erin at the juvenile detention center, but because every conversation they had was recorded and could be used against her in trial, he couldn't ask her any questions, like why had she done such a heinous thing. Still, he had been shown every piece of evidence by investigators, so he knew all of the disturbing details. Despite having every reason to stop visiting Erin, Terry continued. Erin was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences plus 25 years for capital murder on January 2nd, 2009. Charlie and Wade were both given life without the possibility of parole for their crimes. Bobby was sentenced to 40 years. As it stands today, Terry still visits with Erin. In fact, he fights for her early release. Despite seeing the evidence, he still can't bring himself to believe that his daughter could be capable of such a thing. She has told him different stories about the events that took place the night that the Caffey family was killed. In one, she told him that Charlie wanted them dead, and her phone calls to him that night were her trying to talk him out of it. Terry believes that Erin didn't truly think Charlie would follow through with the acts. Unbeknownst to him, Charlie was not the first person that Erin had tried to employ to carry out her plan. A previous boyfriend claimed that Erin had asked him to carry out the same crime when they were dating. This ex-boyfriend of hers was not willing to go to the lengths that Charlie was to make her happy. He thought she was crazy and immediately told her to leave. This fact reveals a couple more details about Erin and her severe psychopathy. She was likely very manipulative, particularly with her boyfriends. She may have used various manipulation tactics, such as urging her past boyfriend to do this for her to keep her happy. She may have also used this approach with Charlie because in the
Alright, I got it. Cases with the most insane twist you've ever heard, episode 1. I think we listened to all these. But let's start it again, fuck it. Or how about 3 missing, 1 found in the most unexpected way? Should be ways, cause... Or 3 missing women found at the same time? I got the Pfizer vaccine. Got my vaccine in the CVS. But you know, this couple that killed the family sounds like a real Scorpio Pisces couple. The Scorpio girl that wouldn't then test the Pisces to see if the Pisces will do anything for her. And the Pisces is doing anything for her. Okay, how about the most twisted cases you've ever heard? Okay, yeah, I don't want the insane twists. I want the twisted cases. Let's go. Documentary.
Hey, Gene?
Jacksonville 911.
Yes, sir, hi. This is,
What about you?
went out to play this afternoon. I thought.
And do you have a PC or?
Now she's missing.
How old is she?
She's 8 years old.
Are you exclusively a console player?
Where was she playing at around the house?
Right around the
Sure, I
house
asked you
here.
that.
Is she a white female or a
Yes,
black female?
she's a white female.
What did she have on when she left?
She had on a red T-shirt. And Mama, did you have on jeans? No, I've been upstairs, Mama. I have searched.
Ma'am?
Yes.
Blue jeans?
Mama, did she have on blue jeans? What'd you have on? What kind of shorts?
Pair of shorts?
She had on a pair of shorts and a red T-shirt.
She blonde hair?
Blueberry
She's got
flavored
reddish
Moderna.
hair. It's actually
Moderna,
brown with
excuse
an
me.
auburn tint to it.
What's her name?
Short.
Right
her name
on.
is Maddie.
I'm gonna be planning to go to Mexico
What's her last name?
next
Clifton,
month,
T-L-I-F as in Frank,
or at the end of
T-O-N.
the month. So it's gonna be pretty litty.
When's the last time anybody saw her?
Mama, what time did I come home from boating?
I didn't get my 3rd shot though, so I hope
5:30?
that's not gonna be a problem.
4:30 to 5 o'clock.
Excuse me.
About 5:30 was the last time we saw her. And I was letting the kids play out here for a little while, and then she disappeared.
You didn't go through with it? Oh well, man.
Does she have any friends nearby?
It'd be like that, man. It'd be like that.
Here right now.
Okay, the police will be there shortly, ma'am. You keep looking, okay?
Okay. Do you know where I am? I mean, I'm at the corner of Fleetwood and Stephen is right there.
What is it?
This phone call's pretty stressful.
And hold on just a moment.
And
Honey, Maddie is gone. No.
I typically listen to.
Okay, my husband just pulled up, but she's not with him, of course.
Okay, the police are gonna be there
I would call
shortly,
it
ma'am, okay?
psychedelic rap.
The frantic 911 call you just heard
Anything
was made
psychedelic,
by Maddie
honestly.
Clifton's mother, Sheila, moments after she realized that her young daughter was missing. As the
I don't know
police
what you would
arrived and the
categorize
neighborhood
Playboy
gathered
Cardi,
to search for
not all
her,
of his
no
songs,
one could have
especially
possibly
not his new
imagined the
album.
heartbreaking and
But a few
horrifying
songs of him,
end to this
like,
case.
from him, like
The following footage contains never-before-seen crime scene
location
photos.
or
The last person to see 8-year-old
You have
Maddie
a bit of
Clifton
a
on November
psychedelic
3rd,
feel to him.
1998 in Jacksonville, Florida,
and I enjoy
was her
things
friend
like
and neighbor,
that,
Joshua
especially
Earl
Tyler,
Patrick
the
Phillips.
Creator.
Because
Which I don't know if you
14-year-old
would
Josh's house
classify
was
him as
right
that,
across the street. The
but
two
I
had become
definitely
fast
would.
friends and often
At
hung
least
out
some of
together.
their songs.
On that day, Maddie had gone over to Josh's house to play baseball outside in his backyard. Later, Maddie headed home, but she never arrived. Around 5 p.m., her mother made the disturbing 911 call you
Have
heard.
I ever
when she
astral
realized that no
projected?
one could find Maddie. She was last seen
No.
wearing a red YMCA basketball
The
shirt
closest
with
I've
her
ever
name
gotten to
across the
astral
back in
projecting
big letters.
is
Immediately, hundreds of people got together
I
and searched
took
for her, looking in the woods around her home and even in dumpsters.
some
Early in the search,
acid
Josh asked Maddie's mother what was going on, and once he learned that no one could find
or
Maddie,
I think it was
he eagerly joined the
mushrooms, and
community
at
to
one
help
point,
search for his friend.
or maybe you would call it
Josh
astral
was
projection, but
distraught
at
when he
one
heard
point
that
I
Maddie
felt
had
like
gone
I was
missing
looking at
and did
myself from
everything
the
he could
third
to help find
person.
her,
If
putting
that,
up flyers with
well,
Maddie's
it should
information
make sense,
and
but if
helping
that
to
makes
canvass
sense,
the area
but
where she vanished. Maddie's face,
so you
often
know,
a picture of her with a Kool-Aid stained smile.
I don't like using
plastered onto
terms like
billboards
astral
and t-shirts,
projection because
and
it
a
just kind of seems
$50,000
like
reward was offered in the hopes that someone, anyone, would
like from an
recognize her and tell her
outsider
English
outsider
family what had
lurking
happened
in
to
it
the
would be
bright and
bullshit,
happy
but
little
like
girl. For almost a week, the
I would
community
say I've
gathered
had an
together to
out of body
search for
experience.
missing Maddie. The first suspect was one of Maddie's neighbors, a man who had been accused of involvement in an assault case over 15
But
or
you
20
know,
years
I was
earlier.
on acid.
However,
It
the
could have
man
just been
had
a
an alibi for
hallucination.
when Maddie disappeared,
That's
and he was
literally you
cleared
could
of any
you could
suspicion.
chalk everything up
Soon
to
the FBI was involved
if
when the
you
local police
ever
struggled
take
to find
psychedelics.
any more
It's just a
leads.
hallucination,
But they too
and
didn't
it means
find any
nothing.
new evidence. It was starting to look like Maddie
But who
had
knows, man? Who
disappeared
knows?
off the face of the earth. But everything changed 6 days after Maddie disappeared, when the most unsuspecting person was revealed
Yesterday,
to have
though,
the darkest secret.
I was trying to
Missy
wake up.
Phillips, Josh's mother, noticed a strange wet
And
spot on the floor of their house.
I couldn't wake up.
From
I was
there,
like
she started searching her son's
still
room
asleep,
until her attention
but
was brought to
waking,
Josh's
like
bed.
getting up as if I
She
was
later
awake,
said,
and I was just
"I didn't want to
struggling.
believe
I
what I was
I almost
seeing."
fell out of my freaking
Then,
bed,
in
dude.
shock, she left her house,
I was worried I was
looking
gonna bump my
around
head
for a
and
police officer.
have a
For a
seizure or
moment, she
something.
glanced over at the neighboring Clifton's house and thought to herself at that moment, they still were holding on to hope, but they would soon have
You
their
have
world
once
crash
consciously
down around
while
them. The
being
officer Missy
sleep
found had been
deprived.
camped
It's a
outside of the
daunting
Clifton
place.
house during the search for Maddie. The officer followed Missy back inside, but entered Josh's room alone to see the horror that Missy had discovered. Sticking out from under Josh's mattress were Maddie's small feet. I have to warn you that the following details of what happened to little Maddie are especially disturbing, and not for the faint of heart. Josh had known where Maddie was all along. When he was asking Maddie's mother about what
Thanks
was
for
going
letting me
on,
be open,
when he
bros.
was handing out flyers,
Comforting
when
to
he
know you
appeared to
won't
be worried
report
about
my
her
ass.
well-being. All that time, Josh had known that Maddie's body was hidden.
Why do people
under his
report for
waterbed.
shit like that, bros?
Police
Hella
found
lame.
that tape had been used to hold the bed frame together and keep her body from being discovered. In addition, the shorts she'd been wearing earlier were taken off.
So you were conscious
Investigators
and
found a
you
baseball bat hidden behind Josh's
astrally
dresser,
projected.
and they also found a knife stashed in the room.
Well,
it was also noted that air fresheners
it may have
were
been a
sitting on his
hallucination
nightstand,
because when you do
along with
have,
freshly burned incense and air freshener
when you do,
spray. Even more disturbing, a flyer about
I
Maddie's
guess,
disappearance
have
had been
a lack
placed
of
next to the
sleep.
air fresheners. What this told the police was that
at
there
some
was a
point
clear
you will
attempt
start
to
to
cover up the
hallucinate.
smell of Maddie's decomposing body. Possibly the most disturbing discovery was that as her
But what
body
is
was
a
removed from the
hallucination?
bed, her hand was still clutching the bed frame, meaning that she had still been alive when
Something
she was
your mind
shoved
can
under there.
completely
Had she
make
still
up?
been alive when everyone was out looking for her, or when Josh was in the street pretending that he didn't know what had happened to Maddie after she left his house?
My God.
We may never know. But what is clear is that if Josh had reported what happened, Maddie might have lived.
Bro,
An autopsy
Angel,
revealed
get
that
off
Maddie
my
had been
ass.
struck 3
You
times
literally
in the
betrayed
head,
us
and
twice.
it was believed that Josh's recovered baseball bat had been used as a weapon. Her throat had also been cut with a knife from Josh's room, and she was stabbed
Reclaim
7
it.
to 9 times in the chest, though some sources put that number as high as
Source?
11 times.
Source?
The autopsy also showed no evidence of an assault, despite her underwear being taken off. However, this detail would later come up as a key piece of evidence.
Alright, we're gonna restart this
Josh
whole video
Phillips
because
was
I haven't been paying
arrested, and
attention
it
at
was
all.
a shock to everyone. Those who met Josh
Okay, so let's get past the 911 call. So I guess.
And then she disappeared.
Okay, so there's this girl, little girl.
was made by Maddie Clifton's mother, arrived in
And
the
she
neighborhood
disappeared.
to this case, for no one could have possibly imagined the heartbreaking and horrifying end to this case. The following
I knew I
footage
wanted to
contains
astral
never-before-seen
project, and I wanted to
crime
go
scene
there. That's
photos.
why I sleep deprived
The
myself.
last
I knew
person
how
to
to
see
get into that
8-year-old
place
Maddie
through learning
Clifton on
about it.
November 3rd, 1998 in Jacksonville, Florida
Yeah,
was her friend and neighbor, Joshua Earl Patrick Phillips.
You could do that with
Because
meditation too,
14-year-old
I'm pretty
Josh's
sure.
house was right across the street. The two had become fast friends and often hung out together. On that day, Maddie had gone over to Josh's house to play baseball.
I'm not
outside
judging you
his
for doing it the
backyard.
just sleep deprived
Later,
way.
Maddie
I'm
headed
just saying.
home, but she never arrived. Around 5 p.m., her mother made the disturbing 911 call you heard when she realized that no one could find Maddie. She was last seen wearing a red YMCA basketball shirt with her name across the back in big letters. Immediately, hundreds of people got together and searched for her, looking in the woods around her home and even in dumpsters. Early in the search, Josh asked Maddie's mother what was going on, and once he learned that no one could find Maddie, he eagerly joined the community to help search for his friend. Josh was distraught when he heard that Maddie had gone missing and did everything he could to help find her, putting up flyers with Maddie's information and helping to canvass the area where she vanished. Maddie's face, often a picture of her with a Kool-Aid-stained smile, was plastered onto billboards and t-shirts, and a $50,000 reward was offered in the hopes that someone, anyone, would recognize her and tell her anguished family what had happened to the bright and happy little girl. For almost a week, the community rallied together to search for missing Maddie. The first suspect was one of Maddie's neighbors, a man who had been accused of involvement in an assault case over 15 or 20 years earlier. However, the man had an alibi for when Maddie disappeared, and he was cleared of any suspicion. Soon, the FBI was involved when the local police struggled to find any more leads, but they too didn't find any new evidence. It was starting to look like Maddie had disappeared off the face of the earth. But everything changed 6 days after Maddie disappeared, when the most unsuspecting person was revealed to have the darkest secret. Missy Phillips, Josh's mother, noticed a strange wet spot on the floor of their house. From there, she started searching her son's room until her attention was brought to Josh's bed.
Like you said,
she later said,
did a sleep deprived way, although I wouldn't recommend it.
Then, in shock, she left her house, looking around for a police officer.
And also through
For a
meditation,
moment, she glanced
which
over
I would
at the
recommend.
neighboring Clifton's house and thought to herself at that moment, they still were holding on to hope, but they would soon have their world crash down around them. The officer Missy found had been camped outside of the Clifton house during the search for Maddie. The officer followed Missy back inside, but entered Josh's room alone to see the horror that Missy had discovered. Sticking out from under Josh's mattress were Maddie's small feet.
So who's Josh?
But they Cliff House said that it's searching her son, noted until a strange wet spot on the floor secret. When the most unsuspecting person was revealed to have the
guessing
darkest secret.
Josh is
Missy Phillips,
Maddie's
Josh's mother,
brother.
noticed a strange wet spot on
Or
the floor
Missy
of their
Phillips?
house. From there, she started searching her son's search for his friend. Josh was distraught when he heard that Maddie had gone missing.
Okay, so
Phillips
Josh
was
is a
arrested,
friend.
and it was a shock to everyone that happened to Maddie after she died from even under about her Maddie flowing Josh's now there and searching her mother, but it revealed to have the darkest secret. Missy
Interesting.
Phillips, Josh's mother, noticed a strange wet spot on the floor of their house. From there, she started searching her son's room until her attention was brought to Josh's bed. She later said, "I didn't want to believe what I was seeing." Then, in shock, she left her house, looking around for a police officer. For a moment, she glanced over at the neighboring Clifton's house and thought to herself at that moment, they still were holding on to hope, but they would soon have their world crash down around them. The officer Missy found had been camped outside of the Clifton house during the search for Maddie. The officer followed Missy back inside, but entered Josh's room alone to see the horror that Missy had discovered. Sticking out from under Josh's mattress were Maddie's small feet. I have to warn you that the following details of what happened to little Maddie are especially disturbing, and not for the faint of heart. Josh had known where Maddie was all along, when he was asking Maddie's mother about what was going on, when he was handing out flyers, when he appeared to be worried about her well-being. All that time, Josh had known that Maddie's body was hidden under his waterbed. Police found that tape had been used to hold the bed frame together.
Have I ever had a dream about falling in love and wake up still in love?
Shorts she'd been wearing earlier were taken off.
No, because I would remember that. I did have, however, had a dream where
It was also noted that air
my
fresheners were sitting on
mom
his nightstand,
died,
along with freshly
and
burned
I was
incense
just
and air
absolutely
freshener
bawling
spray.
my eyes out to the
Even more
point where
disturbing,
like
a
it was
flyer about
difficult to
Maddie's
breathe. I
disappearance
was
had
like
been placed next to the air fresheners.
just crying in
What
my
this told
dream,
the police was that there was a clear attempt to cover up
and
the
I woke
smell
up
of
gasping
Maddie's
for air.
decomposing body. Possibly the
And
most
I took
disturbing
that as a
discovery
sign to
was that
just
as
treat
her
my
body
mom
was
better and
removed from
appreciate
the
her
bed,
more,
her hand was still
so I
clutching
can
the
take
bed
it from
frame,
there.
meaning that she had still been alive when she was
I've
shoved under
also
there.
almost had a
Had she
wet
still
dream
been
once. I've never
alive
had a
when
wet dream,
everyone was out
which
looking
I know
for
this
her?
might be
Or when Josh
TMI,
was in the
but
street pretending that he didn't
one
know what had
time
happened to Maddie
I
after
almost had a
she'd
wet
left
dream.
his house? We may never know.
The
But
dream
what
was
is clear
happening.
is that if Josh had reported what happened, Maddie might have lived.
I felt myself.
An autopsy revealed that
You know,
Maddie
this
had
is
been
too much
struck
information. I'm
3
gonna stop
times in
myself
the
right
head,
there.
and it was believed
But
that Josh's
basically, I
recovered
woke up
baseball bat
before.
had been used as a weapon.
I woke up
Her
before,
throat had
yeah.
also been cut with a knife from Josh's room,
I'm not gonna kill
and
the
she was
instructor.
stabbed 7 to 9 times in the chest, though some sources put that number as high as 11 times.
I think I've had
The
dreams
autopsy
about
also
being
showed
in
no
love
evidence of an
with
assault,
people that don't
despite her
exist.
underwear being taken off. However, this
But
detail would later come
I don't
up
think
as
I've
a
ever
key
woken up
piece
still
of
in love.
evidence. Josh Phillips was
Okay.
arrested.
God damn
and
it,
was a
Jibber
shock
Jabber!
to
I keep
everyone.
talking and.
Those who met Josh described him as a quiet, was so Dichi's disturbing discovery was that as her body of air freshener, even sitting on his nightstand, found a knife and then being police found Josh handing out flyers all along.
Keep getting distracted from the video. Same with. You've had that happen too? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm glad I'm not alone here. Same with spinning. You spin in your dream and wake up spinning? Yeah, I think I do that too. I think drooling. I mean, I do drool sometimes, but especially I'll just for some reason push out more saliva than I guess needed. And I know you don't need saliva when you drool. You need saliva when you drool, but you don't need to drool. But when you do drool, for some reason, sometimes I push out a lot more saliva than I usually do.
When he was asking Maddie's mother what was going on, when he was handing out flyers, when he appeared to be under his waterbed. Police
the girl was
found
under
that
his
tape had
waterbed.
been used to hold the bed frame together and keep her body from being discovered. In addition, the shorts she'd been wearing earlier were taken off. Investigators found a baseball bat hidden behind Josh's dresser, and they also found a knife stashed in the room. It was also noted that air fresheners were sitting on his nightstand.
Oh my! How am I?
With freshly burned incense and air freshener spray. Even more disturbing, a flyer about Maddie's disappearance had been placed next to the air fresheners. What this told the police was that there was a clear attempt to cover up the smell of Maddie's decomposing body. Possibly the most disturbing discovery was that as her body was removed from the bed, her hand was still clutching the bed frame, meaning that she had still been alive when she was shoved under there.
Bruh.
Had she still been alive when everyone was out looking for her? Or when Josh was in the street pretending that he didn't know what had happened to Maddie after she left his house? We may never know. But what is clear is that if Josh had reported what happened, Maddie might have lived. An autopsy revealed that Maddie had been struck 3 times in the head, and it was believed that Josh's recovered baseball bat had been used as a weapon. Her throat had also been cut with a knife from Josh's room, and she was stabbed 7 to 9 times in the chest, though some sources put that number as high as 11 times. The autopsy also showed no evidence of an assault, despite her underwear being taken off. However, this detail would later come up as a key piece of evidence. Josh Phillips was arrested, and it was a shock to everyone. Those who met Josh described him as a quiet but friendly kid, with nothing particularly remarkable about him. Yet within hours, he admitted to killing Maddie on the day she was reported missing. It was during this confession that Josh gave his account of what happened to Maddie. Remember, this is his side of the story. Josh was home alone when Maddie showed up and asked him to play, and he knew that he wasn't allowed to have friends over when his parents weren't there.
Oh, Jibber Jabber, this is a story
that
I think you were telling me
hit in the
about.
eye by the ball. As she started bleeding, she also started to cry loudly. To calm Maddie down, he brought her into his house, but she kept screaming, which sent Josh into a panic. He told the investigators that he was afraid his father would come home at any minute, and he would be angry with Josh for letting Maddie come into his house without permission. Panicking and wanting Maddie to be quiet, he grabbed his baseball bat and hit her once or twice hard on the head. He then hit her body under his waterbed. When his father finally came home, Josh said that Maddie was still moaning. He then dragged her out from the bed and stabbed her in the chest before hiding her body again until his mother found it.
Jesus.
What many people to this day can't help but wonder in horror about is if Josh slept in his bed on top of Maddie's body. And the answer,
Probably.
as terrible as it is, seems to be yes. For a week. Let that sink in. Josh had no history of violence, nothing that would have ever made anyone suspect him, especially his actions when he was helping to look for Maddie. But still, Josh's version of events didn't quite make sense to investigators. For starters, he claimed that
gonna
Maddie's
sell my
shorts and
bitch.
underpants
It's
had
not
been
that
pulled
good.
off when he was dragging her inside the house from outside. Most people can agree, as investigators did, that his explanation didn't quite seem plausible. The tight-knit community was stunned and horrified to learn that the boy that helped search for Maddie just a few days earlier had been her
Baker,
killer
66
all along.
chambers.
Some started questioning the Phillips family about how
I'll
they
put it in
hadn't
my playlist
noticed
right
the young
now.
girl's body being hidden in their home for almost a week. Missy explained that there was nothing out of order for her to suspect anything. However, there were also signs that something was wrong, which only really made sense in retrospect. Josh had been especially quiet since Maddie was reported missing, but this was just explained away as him being nervous for his friend and scared. Additionally, if you're familiar with this case, then you've probably heard that police officers previously searched the Phillips house in the days before her body was found. The sheriff at the time claimed they searched the house, but that the officers
Baker
never
You
saw
Maker?
anything
I've heard of Baker You
suspicious.
Maker.
How the police
You
and
should check
Josh's
out,
parents didn't notice the smell of a decomposing corpse is beyond me. Josh insisted that he hit Maddie out of fear of his father, but the truth behind his home life wasn't revealed until Missy explained it publicly.
Born to Lose.
She said that she and Josh walked
Born
on
to Lose is good. I'm
eggshells
sure
at
you've heard that
home
one.
because her husband was so
There's
intimidating,
another one I like, though.
frightening, and sometimes overbearing. He really didn't like it when any neighborhood children were in his house when an adult wasn't there to supervise, but he especially didn't want Josh
Love
to
and
spend
life,
his time playing with any
happiness and
girls
sight.
younger than
So
him.
something and
Missy
feeling
said
right. Trying
he
to
didn't
make
have a
it in this
fondness
world,
of
but
little
this world
girls,
ain't filled,
which she
built
never
for my
understood.
kind.
Also, Josh's father, Steve, never got the chance to explain his side of things because he died in 2000 in a car accident.
Many men.
When the case went to trial, Josh was charged as an adult. Josh's defense
Wish
argued
death
that what happened to
on me.
Maddie began as an accident and deteriorated through panic.
Alright, we've heard this one before, so let's go with the next one. Most twisted cases 2. I wonder if this will take me.
It bordered on.
Nope. Ewu Most Twisted. There we go. There's episode 1. Where's episode 2 though? I see episode 3. Alright, we'll go with episode 3 then.
CCTV cameras captured the shocking moment when police arrived at a crowded gym parking lot to find Joshua Stimson soaked in blood. He willingly placed both hands on a police vehicle and surrendered as his victim bled to death nearby. What exactly caused the young man to snap so violently remains a mystery. But we know one thing for sure. When Molly downloaded a dating app, she could have never predicted the shockingly horrific turn her life would take. Following high school, Molly began studying exercise science at the University of Kent with hopes of becoming a personal trainer. The ambitious student was undeniably busy, but she still made time for friends and even downloaded the popular Tinder app to find dates. Then, in the summer of 2016, Molly swiped right for a 26-year-old factory worker named Joshua Stimson. The pair started chatting regularly, and after a few months, they finally agreed to meet in person. Molly expressed
only
to her
4
mom that
bullets?
she felt nervous, but said he appeared normal, and they began officially dating soon after the meetup. It wasn't long before Joshua began spending more and more time with Molly and her loved ones, even choosing to enjoy Father's Day with Molly's dad rather than his own. But it
Damn,
seems
that's fucked
strange
up.
that he never introduced her to his friends, and always wanted to be at her house. As far as anyone could tell, he didn't seem to have many friends, if any at all. As Joshua and Molly grew closer, he eventually confided in her that he had a bipolar disorder, though he was never formally diagnosed. People with serious mental health problems, such as bipolar disorder, have a difficult time maintaining long-term relationships because of their volatile behavior, which could explain why Joshua didn't spend much time with his family or seem to have his own friends. Over time, Joshua's interest in hanging out with Molly's friends and family dwindled, saying that he preferred her company alone. Red flags were going up everywhere, and Molly's loved ones were starting to sense that something dark was brewing under the surface. Her father later stated, he just wanted her to himself and wasn't interested in making new friends or even dealing with Molly's friends. Isolating Molly from her friends and family is a major sign of an abusive relationship, and it can be a form of domestic violence. Other signs of social isolation abuse would be preventing someone from participating in social activities, needing to know everywhere they've been or are going, checking their mail, phone, email, and more, or restricting their access to transportation. Joshua became very controlling over Molly and refused to give her the space she needed to study or spend time alone with friends. He even quit his job when summer break began so that he could be with her all the time. Molly was irritated by his drastic change in demeanor, but still wanted to make things work and encouraged him to get another job. Some believe her dedication to Joshua was based on the fact that he was her first real boyfriend. When this controlling behavior persisted, Molly told him that she needed some space from their relationship. Joshua tried to manipulate the situation by suggesting Molly was unhappy with other aspects of her life, not with him. Everyone was about to see a terrifying new side of Joshua. He accompanied the McLaren family on a trip to celebrate Molly's aunt's 60th birthday. At the party, her parents couldn't help but notice that he kept a very close watch over Molly and seemed upset when she danced with her cousins. Afterward, the family headed to an inn where they had booked separate rooms for the night, but soon after arriving, Molly's mom received an alarming message from her daughter. Molly sent a WhatsApp message asking her mom to come to their room because Joshua was playing up. Both Joshua and Molly were clearly distressed over a disagreement when she arrived. Her mom quickly gathered that Joshua had been taking videos of Molly without her consent during the argument and was trying to use them against her. Another sign of social isolation abuse is attempting to make someone look bad or ruin your reputation, which may have been what Joshua was trying to do to Molly. That was the final straw for Molly, and after 4 months together, she told her mom that she knew the relationship needed to end. Still, she wanted to wait for the right moment to protect his feelings, but during a night out with friends, it all came crashing down. Molly told Joshua that they were officially done, and as I'm sure you can imagine, he didn't take it very well. Leaving a relationship is the most dangerous time for a domestic violence victim. Joshua felt like he was able to control Molly while they were dating, but he lost control of her when she broke up with him. Over the next few weeks, Joshua flooded Molly's phone with calls and texts, begging her to give him another chance, but she continued to hold her ground. That's when he took things to a whole new level, leaving hateful posts and accusations on Molly's Facebook page, even going so far as to tag her family and friends. In those first few weeks after they broke up, Joshua likely acted very remorseful, charming, and promised to change his behavior. This is part of the cycle of abuse, which draws victims back in. But when Molly didn't fall for it, Joshua was furious, which is when the hateful posts on her Facebook page started. Enough was enough. Molly's parents encouraged their daughter, who was now filled with fear and anxiety, to go to the police and file a report. Officers ran a background check on Joshua and found nothing, so they told Molly and her loved ones to block him on all social media outlets and report any additional abuse. Unfortunately, the disturbing post carried on for several more days, so Molly went to the police again. Still, no further actions were taken to protect her, beyond giving Joshua a verbal warning over the phone. Often the police don't take matters of harassment and stalking between exes as seriously as they should, because these crimes are relatively minor, especially in areas with high crime. However, these lower-level misdemeanor offenses sometimes can escalate and end in tragedy. Then, just a few days later, Molly went out to dinner with friends to celebrate her acceptance into a personal training program. But she was shocked when Joshua showed up at the restaurant. Molly was so uncomfortable that she left early. The goal of stalking is to scare the victim. Joshua started by flooding Molly's phone with messages, and then the stalking behavior escalated to showing up at her dinner with friends. The following morning, June 29, 2017, Molly went to the gym to practice for the upcoming program, but much to her terror, Joshua showed up too. Surveillance footage captured him creepily pacing up and down the stairs before entering the same upstairs room as Molly. He proceeded to lay out an exercise mat and work out very close to her. Molly hesitantly approached him before sending a worried text to her friend. At first, it was unclear how Joshua knew Molly would be at the gym, but apparently he had asked another woman to track her social media accounts and inform him of her whereabouts.
What the fuck?
Pacing shows that Joshua was in a high state of agitation. Molly left the room and frantically called her mom, explaining that Joshua had shown up at the gym. Molly's mom urged her to head straight home, so after it was clear that he had left the gym, she ended her workout and started walking to her car. That's when she sent the chilling final message saying, "I feel like I'm looking over my shoulder all the time." Molly was still sitting in her car typing on her phone when all of a sudden at around 11 a.m., Joshua opened the car door and began viciously attacking her with a knife. She didn't even have a chance to raise her arms and protect herself before he severed several major arteries. Molly screamed and pressed on her car.
Damn, we should have a whole like 20
Josh
minutes
her
stuff
social
in this.
media accounts and inform him of her. Molly left the room and frantic shows that Joshua was in a high state of agitation.
Damn, they actually
Molly
have
left the room
footage,
and
bro.
frantically calls
Jesus
the
Christ.
Josh clear as Bill and the other Joshua with friends to sell in how often were taken.
Alright,
Molly
I want to look at the gym
up at her,
footage.
he went to the gym. Here's room as Molly footage pro morning June 29th, 2017. Molly went to the gym to practice for the upcoming program, but much to her terror, Joshua showed up too. Surveillance footage captured him creepily pacing up and down the stairs before entering the same upstairs room as Molly. He proceeded to lay out an exercise mat and work out very close to her. Molly hesitantly approached him before sending a worried text to her friend. At first, it was unclear how Joshua knew Molly would be at the gym, but apparently he had asked another woman to track her social media
fucking
accounts
weird.
and inform him of her whereabouts.
My
He had
God.
At first, to her there's room as Molly captured
So-
him creepily pacing up and down the stairs before entering the same.
He was
upstairs
pacing up
room
and
as
down the
Molly.
stairs.
Footage captured him creepily pacing.
Okay, so this gym has multiple stories, and I believe she's on the second story, and she's in a room by herself, and the dude is pacing up and down the staircase, looking into the room, looking at her, and then he goes into the room and just starts casually working out like it's nothing. That is fucking
up and down the
insane.
stairs before entering the same upstairs. Molly hesitantly approached me at the gym, but apparently he had asked another woman to track her social media accounts and inform him of her whereabouts. Pacing shows that Joshua was in a high state of agitation. Molly left the room and frantically called her mom, explaining that Joshua had shown up at the gym. Molly's mom urged her to head straight home, so after it was clear that he had left the gym, she ended her workout and started walking to her car. That's when she sent the chilling final message saying, "I feel like I'm looking over my shoulder all the time." Molly was still sitting in her car typing on her phone when all of a sudden at around 11 a.m., Joshua opened the car door and began viciously attacking her with a knife. She didn't even have a chance to raise her arms and protect herself before he severed several major arteries. Molly screamed and pressed on her car horn, but it was no use. A brave man walking his dog witnessed the assault and tried to intervene by pulling Joshua out of the car, but his legs were drenched in blood and too slippery to grasp. The Good Samaritan screamed at another passerby to call the police as he pleaded with Joshua to stop killing her. When officers arrived at the chaotic scene, they found Joshua covered in blood. His hands were severely wounded, with some sources stating he later had to have a finger amputated. Nevertheless, Joshua calmly said, "She's in the car. I've killed her," before putting his hands on the police vehicle and surrendering. He was placed under arrest but denied the murder charge on the grounds of diminished responsibility, saying he was only guilty of manslaughter. When Molly left Joshua, he felt very out of control. Abusers hate feeling out of control. When nothing worked to get her back, he made the decision to take back control by killing her. In his mind, this is justified because he believed that she had betrayed him. News of the horrific attack spread fast and sent shockwaves across the nation, but even more shocking was the brutal nature of the killing. A forensic pathologist stated that Molly had suffered a minimum of 75 knife wounds to her head, neck, and chest, and that her throat was entirely cut through. Joshua had deliberately finished the assault with a slicing motion to inflict maximum damage and leave no room for medical intervention. This type of attack is often referred to as an overkill. Overkill is the use of force or actions that go further than what would be necessary to achieve killing someone. Overkill is rarely seen in crimes between strangers and is frequently seen in cases that involve exes or family members. Joshua stabbing Molly 75 times would be a typical example of an overkill. Joshua claimed he had no recollection of the attack during the agonizing trial, and his attorney argued that significant childhood trauma left him with a personality disorder. However, the prosecution called upon a psychiatrist who testified that Joshua was focused and in control, with no sign of a personality disorder. Furthermore, prosecutors showed the court surveillance footage of Joshua purchasing a knife and a pickaxe just days before the murder, proving premeditation. But there was still one more shocking revelation. Someone can be focused and in control but still have a personality disorder. People who commit murder often have significant childhood trauma. However, it is unlikely that he had no recollection of the attack. This was not a crime of passion in the heat of the moment. He planned this well in advance and probably thought about it several times before it actually happened. He may have even had the knife with him when he showed up at the restaurant the night before, but the right opportunity didn't present itself. When he saw Molly alone in her car, he saw that as the moment to carry out his plan. Unbeknownst to Molly or her family, Joshua had reportedly stalked and harassed at least one other woman shortly before they met. Alexandra Dale, one of his ex-girlfriends, testified that she spoke to the police 3 times about Joshua, saying he threatened to drown her and slashed her car tires. Yet according to several reports, the police took no action after these initial reports were made. In less than 4 hours, the jury unanimously found Joshua Stimson guilty of murder, and he was sentenced to a minimum of 26 years behind bars. Now, let's move on to our next case. Singaporean graphic designer Anthony Lur told reporters at his wife's funeral, "She's the angel, I am the devil." He was right. 28-year-old Anthony Lur met Annie Long when she was just 15 years old, and they were married 5 years later. The couple welcomed a daughter in 1997, but things were far from picture perfect. You see, Anthony struggled to hold down a steady job and was known to gamble what little money they had away. Not to mention, Annie uncovered several affairs between her husband and different women. Determined to save their marriage, Annie forgave him and began working as a real estate agent to help support the family. However, by 1999, the relationship had become unbearable, leading Annie to move into her mother's house with their young daughter. Distraught by the sudden change, Anthony tried to take his own life with sleeping pills. Annie temporarily returned to help him, but that didn't stop her from filing for divorce the following year. Threatening to or actually attempting to take one's own life is a common tactic of abusers to manipulate their partners. People who commit murder often have significant childhood trauma. However, it is unlikely that he had no recollection of the attack. This was not a crime of passion in the heat of the moment. He planned this well in advance and probably thought about it several times before it actually happened. He may have even had the knife with him when he showed up at the restaurant the night before, but the right opportunity didn't present itself. When he saw Molly alone in her car, he saw that as the moment to carry out his plan. Unbeknownst to Molly or her family, Joshua had reportedly stalked and harassed at least one other woman shortly before they met. Alexandra Dale, one of his ex-girlfriends, testified that she spoke to the police 3 times about Joshua, saying he threatened to drown her and slashed her car tires. Yet according to several reports, the police took no action after these initial reports were made. In less than 4 hours, the jury unanimously found Joshua Stimson guilty of murder, and he was sentenced to a minimum of 26 years behind bars. Now, let's move on to our next case. Singaporean graphic designer Anthony Lur told reporters at his wife's funeral, "She's the angel, I am the devil." He was right. 28-year-old Anthony Lur met Annie Long when she was just 15 years old, and they were married 5 years later. The couple welcomed a daughter in 1997, but things were far from picture perfect. You see, Anthony struggled to hold down a steady job and was known to gamble what little money they had away. Not to mention, Annie uncovered several affairs between her husband and different women. Determined to save their marriage, Annie forgave him and began working as a real estate agent to help support the family. However, by 1999, the relationship had become unbearable, leading Annie to move into her mother's house with their young daughter. Distraught by the sudden change, Anthony tried to take his own life with sleeping pills. Annie temporarily returned to help him, but that didn't stop her from filing for divorce the following year. Threatening to or actually attempting to take one's own life is a common tactic of abusers to manipulate their partners into staying with them. Then 9 months later, on May 14, 2001, Anthony asked Annie to meet him at a nearby park with their daughter so they could sign papers regarding their delinquent mortgage. The pair met, but there was a problem. No one brought a pen. So Anthony asked Annie to run back to her mother's flat to get one while he waited at the park. And she did. One last time. As 30-year-old Annie exited the elevator on the 4th floor, she was violently attacked from behind by an unknown assailant wielding a steak knife. Her throat was slit and she was stabbed several times in the neck and chest before her attacker finally fled the blood-soaked scene. Annie was swiftly transported to Tantock-Sing Hospital, but she passed away a few hours later from her injuries. Detectives worked tirelessly, combing through every inch of the crime scene, but all they uncovered was a torn section of a newspaper next to Annie's body. However, when they searched Anthony's flat, they immediately noticed that his newspaper was suspiciously missing that exact page. Already looking pretty guilty to the police, Anthony wasn't doing himself any favors either. He was reportedly very uncooperative and even combative with authorities as he denied any involvement in the crime. The following day, Anthony attended a wake for Annie amidst a crowd of grieving family members and friends. He sobbed over her open casket and gushed to reporters about how they had shared a deep love despite his wrongdoings as a husband. As if that wasn't enough, he also agonized to the reporter, saying, "What if I did not ask her down? What if I had brought a pen? What
Alright,
if I
man,
had
have
gone
fun
up
on
with her?
Paladins.
1,000 what
Play
ifs,
Pip for me.
but one reality. She's gone." He's putting on a show for everyone and acting his part of the grieving husband. He likely is enjoying the attention
Catch you
and is
later.
feeling in control of the situation. Meanwhile, the investigation intensified as forensic experts unearthed recently deleted messages from Anthony's computer between himself and multiple teenage boys. Wait, what? 4 days after the murder, police brought the two teenagers in for questioning, and it didn't take long for the twisted story to unravel. One of them was 16-year-old Gavin Ng, and the other was a 15-year-old secondary school student we will refer to as Z. Investigators were stunned to the core when Z came right out and confessed to murdering Ng, but they were terribly shocked to find out that he acted
I'm gonna go
under
use the
Anthony's
bathroom. I'll be back. I don't know if my mic was off this whole time, but Jibber Jabber, thank you for watching. Play some Pip for me, bro. Thank you for stopping by. I'll catch you later. Alright, we're back. Looks like my Twitch studio is being a little glitchy. It's not showing me on the screen right now. But it looks like my manager on my phone is telling me that the stream's still going, so. To my one viewer in the chat, if you can't see any in the screen, please let me know.
Orders. 4 hours later, Anthony was arrested at his home and charged with abetment of murder.
Please let me know.
So, who were these young boys and how were they connected to Anthony? Well, the answers all spelled out in front of a crowded courtroom in November 2001 as Anthony and Z stood trial together. As it turns out, Anthony took a liking to a small group of teenagers who often spent time outside a local McDonald's. He visited the boys frequently and eventually inquired about whether they would kill for money. They all thought he was joking at first until he offered up $100,000 and named his wife as the target. Anthony was gaining their trust and cooperation by visiting with them frequently. This indicates that Anthony was planning this for quite a long time. The boys were young and probably looked up to him. Gavin and Z also likely felt special as they were chosen by Anthony out of the whole group. The high amount of money was also very enticing. They also had a grown-up that they knew and trusted telling them that murder was okay. Anthony turned to Gavin and Z and explained that he needed their help carrying out the murder. He gave them detailed instructions on what to wear and how to kill his wife without being caught, even advising that they take her wallet to make it look like a robbery gone wrong. However, when Anthony took Gavin to his home and invited him to practice slicing into a bolster wrapped with newspaper, the young teen started having second thoughts. He told me the skin of the neck was as thin as a newspaper, Gavin later said in his testimony. Gavin allegedly tried calling Z to tell him about the terrifying training exercise, but he couldn't reach him. It wasn't until 2 days after Annie's murder that he finally caught up with his friend who, according to Gavin, confessed. Anthony's wife, I do already. Gavin was never charged with any crime. There's no legal obligation for a person who is not a mandatory reporter to call the police about a crime that hasn't occurred, even if they have compelling reasons to believe it may. If this was not the case, perhaps Annie would still be alive today, and certainly Gavin would have been charged. On the night of the murder, after being fully prepared by Anthony with a list of do's and don'ts, Z rode with him to Annie's flat with a knife concealed with a newspaper tucked in his waistband. They went in different directions from there. Anthony to the park and Z towards the flat, but continued communicating by phone. As part of the calculated scheme, Anthony told Annie that he forgot to bring a pen. Z was waiting outside the elevator door and ambushed the mother right as she stepped out, fleeing down the stairs to avoid being seen. Z also told the court that Anthony had admitted to trying to murder Annie in the past, but his daughter's presence stopped him. Throughout the trial, Anthony appeared cheerful and would often smile despite the horrific circumstances. He maintained his innocence in the death of his wife. Furthermore, he told the court that it was all just a big misunderstanding and that the boys clearly didn't realize he'd been joking all along. I had to give him a target. It was more a challenge of their guts and to expose their bluff, he said. Of course, the prosecution wasn't buying any of it. Another possible motive was to punish his wife for leaving him and take control of the situation. As the judge sentenced Anthony Lehr to death, he remarked that the crime was a serious death match on the chessboard of reality, where the young men were to be his pawns, and he, as king, would direct the demise of his queen. Anthony simply smiled at this comment. He was executed by hanging on December 13th, 2002. Due to his young age, Z was spared the death penalty, but he was given an indefinite prison sentence. After 17 years behind bars, he was pardoned in 2018 at 32 years old. While this insane case has gone down in history as one of Singapore's most shocking crimes to date, it's important to remember the life that was lost. Annie Long was a devoted, kind, and compassionate mother who didn't deserve the fate that befell her, unlike her monstrous husband. Now, let's move on to our next case.
Stomach! Get on your stomach! Get on your stomach now! Get on your stomach! Clear that passenger. Hey, clear that car! Clear that car! If you move, I'm gonna shoot you. You understand?
Jesus.
Cross your feet and bring them to your butt. Cross your feet and bring them to your butt.
Why am I? Oh, I don't have the grenade throwing skill.
You fucking move, I'm gonna shoot you.
When 23-year-old South Toledo mother Crystal Phillips left home to run an errand, she had no idea that her children were being left under the care of an absolute monster. 1 year earlier, Crystal separated from her husband, Jaquil Phillips, with who she shared 4 young children, 3 boys and a girl. Around 1 month later, Crystal started dating a new man named Kevin Moore. The 27-year-old was originally from Georgia, but had spent the last few years living in Florida and Indiana before relocating to Toledo. Now, Kevin might have been a breath of fresh air for Crystal, but he was by no means an angel. He had several run-ins with the police during his time in Florida, including a conviction for third-degree felony domestic battery by strangulation. Domestic violence is almost never an isolated event, so this prior charge is a huge red flag. The couple had been together for 6 months when, on February 5th, 2021, Crystal's mother asked if she could help her move some furniture. Kevin stayed at home to watch her 4 children, and before leaving, Crystal said everything seemed fine and that she and Kevin even kissed goodbye. However, when Crystal returned home an hour later, she found herself right in the middle of every parent's worst nightmare. Upon her arrival, Crystal began unloading boxes from a trailer parked outside. She said things felt completely normal at first, but 10 to 15 minutes later, her daughter Graciana came running out with a startling admission. The 2-year-old explained that Kevin had given one of her brothers a nosebleed. Crystal raced into the home to check on her little boys, and when she got to their bedroom, she found a gruesome scene. All 3 of her sons were bleeding from gunshot wounds. I was in complete shock, Crystal said. I screamed bloody murder. I went outside and I screamed at the neighbors, like nobody heard anything. Why did it take for me to come home and find them before a call was made? Crystal called 911, and while the order of these reports is unclear, Toledo police also received several other frantic calls, with one woman stating she heard screaming that the man shot the babies, and I just heard like 10 more shots. Another caller reported to dispatchers that the suspect was armed and hiding in a van outside the residence. In minutes, countless police vehicles descended on the scene and formed a circle around the van. Kevin calmly stepped out of the van with the gun visibly lying on the ground nearby, but was quickly apprehended without incident. Meanwhile, officers and firefighters rushed into the home, but even some of the trained professionals weren't able to bear the horrific scene inside. It was clear that all 3 boys had extensive gunshot wounds, and unfortunately, emergency responders found that 1-year-old Gabriel and 5-year-old Amir had already passed away from their injuries. But shockingly, 4-year-old Ashton was still alive, despite having been shot in the head. The little boy was swiftly transported to the University of Michigan C.S. Mott Children's Hospital in Ann Arbor, where he continued to fight for his life. The couple's daughter, Graciana, was uninjured and placed in emergency custody with her father, Jaquel. A neighbor later stated that she didn't hear the shooting at first, but after stepping outside, she heard several gunshots before witnessing Kevin as he tried to hide the gun in the snow. She also reported that she initially believed Crystal and her young daughter to be victims as they were lying on the ground outside. All of this happened very quickly if Crystal was only gone for an hour. Kevin may have killed the boys as a way of punishing Crystal, although if that is the case, it is somewhat surprising that he waited until she left in order to kill them. Making her witness the crime would have been more of a punishment. It's also possible that he was jealous of the attention the children received from Crystal. Another possibility is that this was not planned out in advance. Kevin had a history of extreme violence and was likely very quick to anger. Watching young children requires a lot of patience. All of this combined is a recipe for disaster. He may have become very agitated and frustrated in the heat of the moment and snapped. Ashton, who had been shot straight through his tiny jaw, was listed in critical condition at the hospital, but a few days later, they changed his state to stable. After being placed in a medically induced coma, the toddler woke up and started gaining minimal control over his hands, feet, and face. He underwent several surgeries, but is reportedly recovering from the horrific ordeal. Crystal, who spent day and night at the hospital with her son, immediately fell under fire on social media as harsh allegations and even threats against her streamed in. However, she adamantly denied that Kevin had ever been violent towards her or the children, saying, "I really have no clue what happened. We weren't on bad terms, there was no violence, there was nothing." Still, some investigators believe the brutal attack might have been related to a fight between the couple earlier in the day. Kevin Moore was charged with 2 counts of aggravated murder, 1 count of felonious assault, and 1 count of attempted aggravated murder. He was held in the Lucas County Jail with a bond set at $5 million. As of November 2021, Kevin hasn't technically been found guilty and is currently only charged as he waits for a 3rd competency evaluation. He was previously deemed competent to stand trial twice before, but his attorney requested a different psychiatrist evaluate his mental status at the time of the offense. Family members of the lost boys have held protests outside the jail, demanding that he stand trial. It is a long-held constitutional due process right in the United States that a defendant must be able to assist in their own defense. For a person to be deemed competent to stand trial, a defendant must be able to understand the proceedings. Mentally incompetent people cannot be convicted of a crime. The defendant's competency to stand trial is legally unrelated to their mental state at the time of the alleged crime. What is legally required is that they are competent during the criminal proceedings. Whether a defendant has a mental state defense such as insanity or diminished capacity is left to the judge with the help of testimony from mental health experts. While investigators are still struggling to determine a motive for the crime and are uncertain whether or not there was a history of domestic violence between Crystal and Kevin, it's important to remember that there are plenty of resources available to help. Some free and confidential resources available to help victims of domestic violence 24/7 include National Domestic Violence Hotline.
At the end of the video. Yeah. Most twisted cases you've ever heard, episode 4.
Uninvited. If he was only looking for things of monetary.
It was disgusting. Getting a knot in my stomach. Feel awful.
Yo, Pitmaster, welcome back to the stream, my guy. I'm doing well, how are you? Or my gal, rather.
After several days of being interrogated by the police, 30-year-old Matthew Hoffman finally broke his silence and started talking.
We'll keep you as my guy. What up, my guy?
Of what he had to say. I mean, it's one thing to love the great outdoors, but Matthew took his obsession with trees and leaves to a lethal level, and hiding in the roots of this case is a chilling confession you won't believe. Tina Herman was a hard-working 32-year-old living in the quaint town of Apple Valley, Ohio, with her 2 children. Beyond being a devoted mother, she was an incredibly reliable employee at the local Dairy Queen.
In your chair? You woke up in your chair?
So naturally, when she failed to show up for her shift in November 2010, alarm bells went off right away. Tina's absence was so unusual that her manager, Valerie Haythorne, decided to go drive by her home and make sure everything was okay.
That sounds
Tina's truck was in the driveway
kind of bomb.
with another unknown car, and that some lights were on inside the house.
Oh, neck gun? Yeah, that doesn't sound too comfortable. Ouch.
When Tina missed another day of work, Valerie went back to her house and reportedly knocked on the locked front door several times. But all she got in return was an
you should get a shiatsu massage machine.
But strangely,
I got one of those myself, and it works so well with the neck
she could
in
just climb in through a back window to see what was going on, a decision she would soon come to regret. As soon as she entered, Valerie stumbled upon a gruesome scene. The house was in complete disarray, and a large amount of blood coated the floor.
Butternap does sound pretty bomb, honestly. I'm assuming for
authorities rushed to the scene, and it was quickly determined that Tina, her 2 children, 13-year-old Sarah and 10-year-old Cody, and the family dog, a miniature pinscher named Tanner, were all missing. Furthermore, the car in the driveway belonged to Tina's 41-year-old friend, Stephanie Sprang, who was also nowhere to be found. An intensive search began immediately. Detectives spoke with Tina's boyfriend, but he explained that they were in the middle of an amicable breakup, so it wasn't strange that he hadn't seen her recently. With nothing connecting him to the disappearance, police focused on the children's father, Larry Maynard. But he too appeared genuinely distressed over the situation and had a rock-solid alibi. It was another frustrating dead end for the investigation. Detectives then turned to the public for help, giving photos to the media and pressing those close to the family for information. Finally, after putting out an alert on Tina's truck, there was a small break in the case. The missing vehicle was discovered roughly 7 miles away from the family home in the Kenyon College parking lot. As they combed the scene, investigators couldn't help but notice an out-of-place man creeping around the parking lot. He said his name was Matthew Hoffman and that he was waiting for his girlfriend to get off work, so they let him go without any further questions. Due to the alarming circumstances surrounding the disappearances, the police recruited divers, boats, and helicopters.
Okay, I have no idea what's going on in this episode. We're gonna bring it back.
Ohio, with her 2 children. Beyond being a devoted mother, she was an incredibly reliable employee at the local Dairy Queen, who never missed a day of work. So naturally, when she failed to show up for her shift in November 2010, alarm bells ran off right away. Tina's absence was so unusual that her manager,
Were you trying to hop on Pimp or
decided
not?
to go drive by her home and make sure everything was okay. She noticed Tina's truck was in the driveway with another unknown car, and that some lights were on inside the house, so she figured all was well and left. When Tina missed another day of work, Valerie went back to her house and reportedly knocked on the locked front door several times, but all she got in return was an eerie silence on the other side. The lights inside were still on, but strangely, Tina's truck was now
Yeah,
gone
let me
from
just
the
get this chest
driveway,
and I'll head
and
on
only
there.
the unknown vehicle was left. Valerie figured she could just climb in through a back window to see what was going on, a decision she would soon come to regret. As soon as she entered, Valerie stumbled upon a gruesome scene. The house was in complete disarray and a large amount of blood coated the floor, enough to warrant an urgent 911 call. Authorities rushed to the scene, and it was quickly determined that Tina, her two children, 13-year-old Sarah and 10-year-old Cody, and the family dog, a miniature pinscher named Tanner, were all missing. Furthermore, the car in the driveway belonged to Tina's 41-year-old friend, Stephanie Sprang, who was also nowhere to be found. An intensive search began immediately.
Not Stephanie.
Detectives spoke with Tina's boyfriend, but he explained that they were in the middle of an amicable breakup, so it wasn't strange that he hadn't seen her recently. With nothing connecting him to the disappearance, police focused on the children's father, Larry Maynard. But he too appeared genuinely distressed over the situation and had a rock-solid alibi. It was another frustrating dead end for the investigation. Detectives then turned to the public for help, giving photos to the media and pressing those close to the family for information. Finally, after putting out an alert on Tina's truck, there was a small break.
Do you want to host or do you want me to host? I don't know where you are in the
7
story.
miles away from the family home in the Kenyon College
I don't know which
parking
mission
lot.
Bright Lights is.
As they combed the scene, investigators couldn't help but notice an out-of-place man creeping around the parking lot.
For sure.
He said his name was Matthew Hoffman and that he was waiting for his girlfriend to get off work. So they let him go without any further questions. Due to the alarming circumstances surrounding the disappearances, the police recruited divers, boats, and helicopters to aid in the search. Yet everything they needed to crack this case wide open was right inside Tina's home. Investigators found Walmart shopping bags containing 2 tarps and a box of heavy-duty trash bags. Now, anyone who knows true crime will tell you that these items are usually not a good sign, and they would be right in this case. But still, they found one other thing, a receipt. Detectives wasted no time requesting surveillance footage from the local Walmart, and wouldn't you know who they saw purchasing the tarps and trash bags? Creepy parking lot guy Matthew Hoffman. 3 days after the 4 individuals were reported missing, the SWAT team descended on Matthew's home. After throwing a flash grenade, officers barged in through the front door and found Matthew sleeping on a sofa. But only once he was restrained and taken into custody did they notice what was covering the floor. Leaves. Lots of them. Matthew was completely obsessed with trees and leaves. Some sources even say that he was often spotted by neighbors sitting in the branches of a tree. The main living space was buried under a few feet of leaves, with over 100 more bags of leaves lining the walls of the bathroom. But here's the weird thing. Well, maybe not quite as weird as his fixation with the leaves, but there were only 2 trees near his house, so he would have had to go to great lengths to bring that many leaves into his home. Police were initially concerned that the huge pile of leaves stuffed into the living room might be hiding something sinister, like a body. Disturbingly, they also discovered 2 dead squirrels next to a few red popsicles in his freezer. Police rummaged through the mounds of foliage, but initially came up empty-handed. That is, until they entered the basement. Keeping all those leaves in the house is extremely bizarre and is evidence that Matthew was mentally ill. He may have had some strange beliefs or delusions about leaves, which led to him
Blow these guys, they're not worth it.
Tina's young daughter, Sarah Maynard, was discovered bound and gagged on a bed of leaves. While she didn't appear to be injured, she wore a makeshift diaper made from a plastic bag and seemed very confused, telling officers she was late for school and asking about her pet dog. Sarah had no idea what had happened to her mother and brother, but she did say that Matthew cut her finger with a knife, usually gagged her, and that he was going to release her before Christmas. With Tina, Cody, and Stephanie still missing, Sarah was placed in her father's custody after being thoroughly questioned and examined. Meanwhile, back at the police station, detectives were getting to know Matthew Hoffman, starting with his twisted backstory. He grew up in the Warren area in northeastern Ohio with his parents and moved to a different part of the state in 1997 following their divorce. One of his childhood neighbors remembered him as seeming very unhappy all the time, stating he was really lost, he was on a bad path. Matthew was regarded as unpredictable and strange by the few people who knew him. Some stated that he would kill squirrels to eat, light fires in his yard, and climb trees to spy on people. Police also learned that in 2001 he had been convicted of first-degree arson, theft, and burglary for lighting a condominium complex on fire in an effort to cover up the robbery. He served 8 years in prison for these crimes. Matthew has a significant history of odd behavior, which escalated to major crimes. Roughly 1 month before his arrest, Matthew and his girlfriend broke up after he allegedly choked her during an argument. Non-fatal strangulation is a major sign that someone will commit murder in the future. Roughly 1 month before his arrest, he was fired from his job as a tree trimmer for making his supervisor uncomfortable. Oh, and his dog had recently run away. Clearly, things weren't going great for him. However, the information investigators really craved wasn't about Matthew. They wanted to know where the other 3 victims were, but he wouldn't budge. Matthew was placed under 24-hour watch after crying and threatening to harm himself on the evening of his arrest. He then sat in excruciating silence for hours, refusing to answer any of the interrogators' questions. But eventually, he started talking. But still, Matthew wanted to do things his own way, so he attempted to make a bizarre deal with investigators. He said that he would write down the location of the 3 bodies on a piece of paper and then fake an escape attempt so officers could shoot and kill him.
I was hoping I could get some excuse. Pretty good.
He wanted total control of the release of information. Obviously, the police weren't cool with his idea, but Matthew ultimately came clean anyways. In his written confession, he claimed to have murdered Tina, Stephanie, and Cody due to a burglary gone wrong, saying, "I did not enter the house to kill those people. I did not know a single one of them."
I did not enter the house. I did not know one of them. I did not.
He then snuck in through the
hi,
garage
Mark.
sometime the next morning after everyone had left. But when Stephanie and Tina returned home sooner than expected, he snapped and ambushed them. The kids returned home from school later that day to find a terrible scene. Matthew killed Cody and tied Sarah up using an electrical cord he found in the kitchen. Then he used Tina's truck to move the bodies. He has a pattern of committing a more serious crime to cover up a lesser crime. The arson he was convicted of in 2001 was his attempt to cover up his burglary. In the current case, he claims he only murdered Tina, Stephanie, and Cody because he got caught in the act of burglary. Matthew is trying to justify his actions and is not taking responsibility for what he did. He exhibited extreme impulsivity when he chose to murder them, when he was surprised by the victims returning home early. It's possible that he broke into their home not necessarily to steal valuables, but instead because he got a feeling of excitement by being in someone else's home uninvited. If he was only looking for things of monetary value, it's more likely that he would have gotten in and out quickly, and he would have been less likely to encounter the family. He told police that he couldn't bring himself to kill Sarah, but he admitted to stabbing the other 3 to death inside the house and processing their bodies to make their disposal easier. Oh, and in case you were wondering what he meant by processing, well, he dismembered the corpses, put them into trash bags, and then concealed them in a 60-foot tall hollow tree. As if that wasn't horrific enough, he also confessed to killing Tanner, the family pet, because he wouldn't stop barking. Matthew carried on, divulging that he had assaulted Sarah several times during her captivity. But as if trying to demonstrate what a great guy he is, he also told police he kept her well fed, let her watch the movie Iron Man, and lent her his copy of the book Treasure Island. Although he said he couldn't bring himself to kill Sarah, it's more likely that he wanted to keep Sarah for himself. He shows a complete lack of remorse for assaulting Sarah and is seemingly indifferent to her suffering. He justifies
I had her locked up for years, but bro,
such as feeding her, letting her
I
watch
gave
a
her
movie,
Iron Man.
borrow a book.
I let her borrow my book.
Behaviors in order to gain her trust. But in
I don't know what
Matthew's
else you
mind,
want from
he
me.
thinks that what he did was okay because he felt like he took care of her. Matthew agreed to lead police to the tree where the bodies were in the Kokosan Wildlife area, saying he had used a rig and pulley.
He could have gotten kidnapped by some weirdo, some pervert.
Investigators located the 3 missing people and the deceased family dog.
If you're not picking up on my sarcasm, that is sarcasm.
Hiding the bodies inside a hollow tree also fits into his strange delusions about trees and leaves. Forensic psychologists have explained that the leaves in his home may have been comforting to Matthew, and that he may have chosen to put the bodies inside of a tree because it was also comforting and familiar to him. On January 6, 2011, Matthew avoided the
Weird.
death penalty by pleading guilty to 10
I wonder if this dude
felonies.
has autism or
Instead, he
something.
was sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole. His foliage-filled home went into foreclosure later that month, with experts noting his particular obsession with trees as delusional.
Delusional? Let a man like his trees.
I'm going to say, is it actually breathing? No, they're not breathing.
I mean,
No.
he is a murderer.
Okay. And who was it we're talking about? Lexi, she's 3. She's 3. Yeah. Okay. No, she's unconscious and she's not breathing. The health has been arranged. Okay.
They say it takes a village, and as a single mom of 2 young girls, Louise Porton knew that all too well. But in the space of just 3 weeks, both of her daughters tragically passed away. Yet in a 911 call, Louise appears oddly calm as she explains to the operator that her toddler is unconscious and not breathing. Did you hear the voice of a shocked and anguished mother, or is there something evil hiding below the surface? Let's find out, shall we? Our story begins in Rugby, Warwickshire, where 23-year-old Louise Porton grew up and lived with her 2 daughters, 17-month-old Scarlett Vaughn and 3-year-old Lexi Draper. Louise had lived in Walsall, West Midlands for a short time with her partner, Chris Draper. But when she was pregnant with their second child, the couple split up, and she moved back to Warwickshire. Louise reportedly denied Chris any access to his children, and tragically he never even got the chance to meet little Scarlett. Louise was an aspiring model who didn't shy away from X-rated photo shoots and spent a ton of time promoting herself on the website Purpleport under the name Lollipop. However, money was tight, and she often struggled to get by as a single parent. As the stress mounted, Louise became increasingly irritable and began frequently leaving her children with family members and neighbors so she could go out on the town.
Yeah.
While the circumstances weren't easy, several reports stated that the little girls appeared happy and well cared for, but that all changed on January 2nd, 2018. Louise brought Lexi to a local hospital for breathing problems, and doctors diagnosed her with a chest infection. But it wasn't quite that simple, and the truth was almost too horrifying to consider. 2 days later, Louise called emergency services in the early morning hours, explaining that she had gone to check on her sleeping daughter and found her unresponsive. Paramedics rushed to the scene and transported Lexi to the hospital, but no one could understand why she was so ill. The toddler was clearly in pain and having trouble breathing, but with no other explanation, doctors again treated her for an infection and sent her home. But then on January 15th, Louise called emergency services once more, saying that Lexi was alive but not feeling well. When paramedics arrived, they found the 3-year-old pale and mottled, with blue lips and rigor mortis already taking effect. It was clear that she'd been deceased for quite some time at that point, but what really stood out to everyone was Louise's odd behavior. She seemed unfazed by her daughter's death, with one onlooker noting she seemed more like someone who had lost their goldfish. Furthermore, surveillance footage from the night before her death showed Lexi looking full of life as they entered their home. Louise explained that she thought Lexi might have caused her own death by hitting herself in the head with toys. But this tragedy was only the beginning. It's possible the 2 times Louise took Lexi to the hospital for breathing problems were just a test to see if she would be suspected of hurting Lexi. When her daughter was sent home with her both times, Louise may have thought she could get away with murder. It is really difficult for people to believe that a mother could kill her own children. She may have waited to call paramedics until she was absolutely certain that Lexi would not be able to be revived, which is why rigor mortis had already started. She wanted to ensure that there was no chance that Lexi would be saved. While planning for Lexi's funeral, people were very bewildered by the supposedly grieving mother, as she was reportedly heard laughing and using FaceTime to make arrangements with an unknown man. However, no one could have predicted that yet another tragedy would occur just 2 days later, and only 18 days after Lexi's death. On February 1st, Louise summoned an ambulance to help Scarlett, who she claimed had now fallen ill like her sister. But before they could dispatch anyone, Louise said she was too worried to wait for them and that she would just drive to the hospital. Strangely, Louise didn't seem to be in much of a hurry as she stopped at a nearby petrol station to fill up on gas and make a small purchase before pulling over and finally calling for an ambulance. Paramedics came and discovered baby Scarlett lifeless in the back seat with pale skin and blue lips. She was formally declared dead upon arrival at the hospital, with no explanation for what caused her sudden demise. Sensing that something was very wrong, paramedics contacted the Warwickshire police, who commenced a full murder investigation into the 2 deaths. And no one could believe the true horror they would uncover. Louise may have felt that it was less suspicious that the children died in separate incidents several days apart.
Paimon?
She may have
What
also
the
been
heck?
emboldened by the fact that she felt she had
Is this a
gotten
boss?
Lexi's death. Right away, investigators searched Luis's internet browsing history, and it yielded much more than they had anticipated. In the hours before Lexi's death, she searched, how long after drowning can someone be resuscitated? And
Bruh.
how long does it take for a dead body to go cold up to the shoulder? Oh, and worst of all, she contacted 41 different people on a dating app just one day after Lexi died. Call me crazy, but that doesn't exactly fit the profile of a grief-stricken mother. The browsing history on Luis's computer is evidence that she didn't
Oh,
commit the murders
Pomon
in
and
the moment of
Tumba.
anger.
Oh,
For example,
sick.
shaken baby syndrome often occurs in the heat of the moment when a caregiver is so frustrated that they show
I've never seen this one before.
On the contrary, Louise carefully researched and planned in advance how she would kill her children. This was a very calculated decision. With this new information, investigators ordered post-mortem examinations of the girls, and what they found sent shivers down their spines. The medical examiner revealed that both Lexi and Scarlett had died from deliberate airway obstruction, and that they each had unexplained physical injuries. Louise kept up with her social media accounts after the deaths, but naturally, people were skeptical of her story, and soon she began receiving hateful messages. Her mother, Sharon Gordon, remained supportive of her daughter, but when she tried to talk to her about the investigation, Louise allegedly got angry and punched her in the face. Just months after her daughters died, Louise posted on Facebook to a swap, sell, buy things and rugby page that she had 2 bins filled with little girls' clothing that she was trying to sell. She added a photo that showed 2 garbage bags overflowing with Lexi and Scarlett's clothes for 20 pounds per bag. Apparently,
Yeah, I don't
no
think they
one
dropped
responded
anything.
to buy anything from her, even when she knocked 5 pounds off the price. On
What did they
March
drop,
20th,
though?
2018, Louise was arrested on suspicion of murdering her 2 daughters, but it wasn't until 2019 that she was charged. Louise maintained her innocence, but during the trial,
You've
she
never
appeared
seen them before either?
motionless while the girl's father, Chris Draper,
I wonder
could
what they
barely hold
dropped.
it together. He stated in court, "I can't understand why my 2 little girls were taken away because Louise wanted to sleep around." Prosecutors argued that evidence proved Louise
Moon
mercilessly
and
suffocated and strangled the 2 little girls to death.
Bill 2 drops.
Moreover, doctors testified that Lexi's symptoms during her first 2 hospital visits were consistent with deliberate airway obstruction. Still, they weren't suspicious of Louise simply because they couldn't fathom a mother inflicting such terrible pain on their own child. What they didn't know at the time was that Louise had been taking topless photos in the hospital bathroom, answering requests for paid favors, and flirting with security
Wow,
guards.
Pomon
while
resists
Lexi was
explosive
fighting
elemental
for her
damage by
life just a few
50%. That's
steps
pretty cool.
away.
And then
Doctors
Pomon
and
has an
nurses are what are
increased chance to
referred
drop
to
the
as mandatory
legendary
reports. This
the
means that they're
Transformer
required
shield.
by law to report any
Interesting.
reasonable suspicion of abuse.
Transformer.
While it might seem unfathomable to a
absorption
normal
shield.
person to think that a mother could intentionally hurt her children, it occurs more often than we would like to think.
Cool.
Sadly, if these reoccurring hospital visits had been reported and investigated, things may have ended differently for this family. Now, you also might have wondered why Scarlett and Lexi had different last names, and let me just say that the answer to that question does nothing but further illustrate what an awful human being Louise Portman truly is. Following her breakup with Chris, a newly pregnant Louise quickly moved on to form a relationship with a man named Jason Vaughn, who she somehow tricked into believing Scarlett was his biological child. One of her relatives stated, she told him he was Scarlett's father, but she was lying. That's the sort of person she is. I grew up with her, and she was vile. Another relative disclosed that Louise was never a normal child, and that when she became a teenager, she would have violent outbursts and steal from her grandparents. The close source also said she regularly bragged about the money she made working as a prostitute. Even more disturbing truths emerged during the trial, including that Scarlett was already dead in the back seat of Louise's car when she stopped at the petrol station. In addition, court records showed that she had sent a message to someone that same night requesting money so she could take her to the hospital. Frustratingly, it was also uncovered that several people made reports about Louise to Warwickshire Social Services in the time leading up to Lexi's death, but they obviously failed to intervene. There was likely a prior history of physical and or emotional abuse by Louise toward her children before the murders were actually committed. Louise read a statement in her own defense saying, "My children were never an inconvenience to me, and I accommodated my lifestyle and personal life around them." Yeah, sure. The trial lasted 28 days, and Louise was found guilty of both murders. Upon sentencing, the judge stated, "One way or another, you squeezed the life out of each of your daughters, only calling emergency services when you knew they were dead. Louise Porton was sentenced to a minimum of 32 years in prison. More than a year after the untimely deaths, Chris Draper finally got to lay his daughters to rest in a beautiful Walsall funeral. Unfortunately, however, Louise managed to inflict one more tragedy from behind bars. On the second anniversary of her granddaughter's deaths, Louise Porton's mother took her own life, never able to come to terms with what her daughter had done. Now, if this case didn't have you absolutely fuming, then I don't know what will, but fortunately, with Louise locked up, there's one less cold-hearted criminal among us. When 11-year-old Shauna Howe left home for a Girl Scout Halloween party, her parents could have never imagined that it would be the last time they'd see her alive. Nearly 10 years later, DNA evidence led investigators to a local man named Ted Walker, who was finally ready to reveal the horrifying truth that there are far more frightening things than witches, ghosts, and vampires lurking around on Halloween. Our final story takes place in Oil City, Pennsylvania, where Shauna Howe lived with her mother, Lucy, and her stepfather, John. On the morning of October 27, 1992, Shauna left for school dressed as a gymnast in a turquoise bodysuit with black stripes. Later in the day, the fifth grader had plans to sing for senior citizens in the community with her Girl Scout troop before heading to a Halloween party at the local church. At just before 8 in the evening, Shauna began the familiar half-mile walk home from the party. But police received a bone-chilling 911 call just minutes later. Dan Payton, an Oil City resident, claimed he had just witnessed a kidnapping. He said a slender, scruffy-looking man smoking a cigarette snatched a little girl, and he heard muffled screams as he forced her into a boxy, rust-colored car and sped off down the road. Meanwhile, Shauna didn't make it home in time for her 8 o'clock curfew, so John called Lucy, who was at work, to tell her the unsettling news. Lucy began calling Shauna's friends and anyone she might be with, while John scoured her regular walking route, but there was no sign of her anywhere. Finally, when 2 hours passed and she still hadn't returned home, her parents frantically called the Oil City Police Department and reported her missing. Suddenly, the sleepy little town was abuzz with police officers and FBI agents, desperately trying to locate the missing scout. Oil City residents took notice and quickly joined in the search efforts. 2 days later, Shauna's uncle discovered her turquoise and black bodysuit in the woods on the edge of town. Her family struggled to hold on to hope, but unfortunately, the worst was yet to come. The next morning, searchers located Shauna's body in a creek bed below an abandoned railroad bridge, just a few hundred yards away from where her costume had been found the previous day. She was lying face down between a log and a rock, with obvious signs of physical trauma to her head, chest, and arms. Additionally, state troopers noted that her shoes had been neatly placed on the bridge above, leaving her socked feet partially submerged in a shallow stream. Shauna's uncles were handed the grueling task of identifying the body, which they tearfully confirmed to be their beloved niece. As Oil City police began launching a formal homicide investigation, they canceled Halloween indefinitely and urged parents to keep a close eye on their children. Now, the circumstances surrounding Shauna's murder were odd, to say the very least. It almost seemed like someone was taunting them, because searchers had combed the exact area the day before and found nothing. An autopsy uncovered traces of seminal fluid on Shauna's bodysuit and concluded that she'd been assaulted before being thrown from the bridge. The young girl suffered a broken arm and dislocated shoulder, which indicated that she was still alive and trying to break her fall. Making things even more horrific, she also suffered multiple rib
Sorry about
fractures
that.
from
Somebody
hitting a
knocking on the
concrete
door.
pier on the way down. Her cause of death was listed as severe blunt force trauma to the head and chest. Detectives questioned everyone close to Shauna, even collecting DNA from her 12-year-old brother, but their efforts yielded no results. So they turned their attention to any men in the area matching Dan's description of the kidnapper. That's when 33-year-old Eldred Ted Walker came into the picture. Beyond looking the part, Ted also owned a car suspiciously similar to the one Dan saw that night. However, he denied knowing anything about Shauna's murder and willingly submitted a DNA sample that did not match the one found at the crime scene. So while it looked like a solid lead at first, he was free to go, and from there, the case seemingly hit
This
a
is probably
dead
the
end.
best part out of this
Then
entire
exactly
wildlife
5 years
preservation.
later, on October 27, 1997, another little girl went missing in Oil
Yeah.
City.
Do you like
4-year-old
Ewu crime?
Shanae Freeman was abducted from her front yard.
Or do you
and
like
after a
true crime in
harrowing
general?
all-day search, 17-year-old Nicholas Bowen confessed to assaulting and murdering her. Nicholas led investigators to her body, which had been hidden under a pile of leaves in the woods, and he was eventually sentenced to life in prison without parole. Oil Oil City residents were still tormented by Shauna's murder when little Shanae was taken,
You were
and
obsessed
they
with
couldn't
that?
help but notice the similarities between the two cases. Still, there was no evidence to suggest that Bowen was also Shauna's killer, and the case went cold for another 5 years. It also seems unlikely, but not
Stopped watching
impossible,
them
that
for a
Bowen
bit
could
because
have
they
killed
made me
Shauna 5 years prior
me
when
too
he would
sad.
have only been 12 years old. Someone threw Shauna, who was
Oh
still
shit!
alive and likely struggling, off
Did
a
you
bridge,
watch
which would have required a lot of strength. It would have
what
been
was
extremely
it?
difficult for someone who
Katie's
was a
or
similar age as Shauna to
Stacy's
have the physical
Solution?
ability to do this.
Yeah, same.
By
Back when
2002, DNA technology had
Call of
improved
Duty Modern
tremendously,
Warfare, the new
so
one that came
detectives
out,
requested a new examination of a
was
swab taken from
yeah,
Shauna's
hell
mouth.
yeah, I love that
It
one.
matched the seminal DNA found on her clothing, but they didn't
Back
know
when
who
Modern
it
Warfare came
belonged
out,
to
I would watch those
Then, after
every
catching wind of an
single
inmate named
every
Timothy
single game.
O'Brien bragging about killing Shauna to his cellmate at the Venango County Jail, investigators jumped at the chance to get his DNA. Timothy and his brother James lived in Oil City,
I like
but were
this
not
guy,
initially
Evil
suspects in
Crime,
Shauna's
the
case,
JCS
because they were both believed
Criminology,
to be in jail at the time of the attack.
the other
Unfortunately,
channels that
Timothy's
spawned
DNA wasn't a match, but detectives couldn't shake the
from
feeling
that
that he was somehow
channel,
involved
and
in Shauna's murder.
then
When the chief
I like
investigator
Nick
on
Crowley
Shauna's case
too.
retired,
He
he was
does
handed off to a new detective who decided to review files from back in 1992.
things around the internet
And what he found was stunning.
rather than just
The
crime.
brothers had actually made bail just before Shauna's abduction and were not detained at the time of her slaying. Officers raced to get a DNA sample from James, who was serving time in prison for an unrelated attempted kidnapping charge. He agreed, and when the results finally came back from the lab, all jaws hit the floor. It was a positive match to the samples taken from Shauna's bodysuit and mouth. However, with neither brother matching the eyewitness description, investigators knew they needed to plan their case carefully and gather more evidence to secure conviction. So they called in Ted Walker. Beyond looking the part, he was known to hang around with the O'Brien brothers. Believing he may have served as an accomplice, detectives grilled him on his relationship with the O'Brien brothers and learned that the three were closer friends than they originally thought, who all shared a hatred for the Oil City Police Department. When investigators informed Ted about the DNA evidence against James, he stated that some really bad people might have entered his home to do a disgusting thing. He then confessed that all three had participated in the kidnapping of Shauna as a prank to make the police appear foolish. Ted explained that he saw her walking down the street and approached her, asking about Girl Scout cookies and hugging her. Then he put his hand over her mouth and pushed her into the car with the O'Brien brothers before they took off. When asked why they were using his vehicle, Ted told police he was letting them borrow it temporarily. Ted claimed he went home separately, and that James and Timothy later arrived with Shauna. He said they brought her upstairs while he made spaghetti and that he could hear the little girl screaming, "Get off me, let me up, let me go." He allegedly demanded that the brothers leave his house with Shauna, and they supposedly did. Ted adamantly claimed to have played no role in her death. Now, it's important to note that Ted's story changed several times throughout the investigation, but this is the one he stood by during the trial. Ted Walker ultimately accepted a plea deal that involved testifying against the O'Briens in exchange for a lesser sentence. He pleaded guilty to third-degree murder and kidnapping and was given a punishment of 20 to 40 years in prison. It seems unlikely that Ted was only a participant in the initial kidnapping, and then was not involved at all in the assault or murder. He had a pretty good motivation to lie about the extent of his involvement, as he would get a lesser sentence by testifying against the other two. It's a common practice in multi-defendant criminal cases for a prosecutor to offer a lesser sentence to one defendant if his or her testimony is necessary to convict the other defendants. In the case here, the prosecutor may not have had enough evidence without Ted's testimony to secure a conviction for James and Timothy. While it isn't ideal to give a criminal a lesser sentence than they may deserve, sometimes it is the best way to ensure the more culpable people involved get convicted. Finally, in 2005, James and Timothy O'Brien stood trial for kidnapping and murder charges. While they were both acquitted of first-degree murder charges, the brothers were found guilty of second and third-degree murder, as well as kidnapping and conspiracy. During sentencing, the judge stated, "This world was a better place because of Shauna, and it will be a better and safer place without the both of you walking free ever again." At long last, justice for Shauna came when James and Timothy O'Brien were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
In the year 1980, on Wednesday the 9th of July at exactly 11:54 p.m., a little girl named Jodi Ann Arias was born in the
Wrath of Jody. Oh, it's Jennifer Solution. That's what it's called. They're playing JCS. They're listening to me. Alright, 3 missing women found in the most unexpected way.
Cleveland 911 police, ambulance to fire.
Hey, check this out. I just came from McDonald's,
By
right?
Iwu Crime Story.
They're trying to break out the fucking house next door to me. She like, this motherfucker done kidnapped me and my daughter.
I think I've heard this before.
She think her life needs that. You know what I mean?
Sir, you have to calm down and slow down. Is she still in the street?
Yeah, I'm looking at her. She right now. She calling
You haven't watched him for quite a bit?
Cleveland 911.
You didn't watch him for quite a bit? Or you haven't watched him for quite a bit?
Okay, and what's going on there?
I've been kidnapped and I've been missing for 10 years and I'm here, I'm free now.
Yeah, I've heard this one.
I'm using the phone.
Okay, stay there with those neighbors talking.
You know, why not? Let's listen to some JCS. JCS. I feel like what pretending to be crazy looks like is gonna make me cringe. Wrath of Jody. Nah. Immoral parenting. Social crime. It's not JCS, but it's social crime, social and criminal psychology. Yeah, sounds good. Alright. And give me a quick sec. I'm gonna go use the bathroom. And I won't take 20 minutes this time. I'll be back. Alright. We're back. Whoa.
There are a total of 3 911 calls made the morning Amari Nicholson was reported missing. The first call by his mother, Taylor Nicholson.
Wrath of Jody is a bit obnoxious. House of Horrors? Hold on, can I scroll up in my... I don't think I can.
My apartment.
In the text?
Somebody came knocking on the door. My boyfriend thought it was related to us, and she ran out the door with my baby.
What address did this happen at?
It's the Emerald Suite.
Oh, would you be down if I put on Wrath of Jody then? Let's see. Oh my god, it's 2 hours. Oh my lord, man. No way. No shot.
Born in the city of Salinas, California, and completely unbeknownst to her doting parents, was destined to become one of the most infamous people in the United States of America.
The reason why I listen to them rather than watch them. Yeah, it is. Alright, is it too loud?
From what we know
Bit loud
about
on
her
my end, so I
behavioral
might turn it down.
sequences, and despite what her defense team would later want you to believe, There's virtually nothing in Jodi's childhood that can be linked as a contributing factor to what she would eventually be capable of. The only thing worth mentioning was that she dropped out of high school in the 11th grade to
I don't
pursue
know if
a
it's too
career
low
in
now.
photography, but it went nowhere. In February of 2006, at 26 years of age, she began a new job as a salesperson for a network marketing company called Prepaid Legal. And it was through this occupation where she crossed paths with fellow sales representative Travis Alexander, a 28-year-old practicing Mormon from Arizona, who also worked part-time as a motivational speaker.
Hey, level up.
He was a very charismatic young man, which immediately caught Jodi's attention. They met at a business conference in September of 2006 and began a curious relationship from that point forward. To cut a long story short, Jodi was in love, and Travis was not. They broke up after just 5 months, but soon after the split, Jodi moved from her grandparents' home in Yreka, California, into an apartment just 2 blocks from Travis's house in Mesa, Arizona. She was at that moment labeled the crazy stalker ex by all of Travis's friends, and although Travis agreed, he would continue having sex with her out of pure convenience. She would show up unannounced on countless occasions, sometimes in the middle of the night, and Travis would let her in every time. It became somewhat of a routine, and a dysfunctional situation that neither were happy with. Travis, although he enjoyed the sex, essentially wanted her out of his life, while Jodi desperately wanted a serious relationship. And going off the myriad of entries in her diary, she firmly held on to the belief that they were meant to be together. In late May of 2008, however, she would ultimately have a change of heart. Travis had a work retreat planned to Cancun, Mexico for July 10th. It was all paid for by his employer and allowed him to take a friend with him. Jodi knew about this and believed, or at the very least hoped, that she would be the one going. Yet in the last week of May, it became known that Travis was taking another woman instead, a Mormon girl by the name of Mimi Hall, someone that Travis had been romantically interested in for some time. When Jodi found out, it would be safe to assume that she was heartbroken. It would be even safer to assume that she was absolutely enraged, and the collective opinion was that a specific thought process began to emerge in her mind, one that forged a psychological justification for a certain decision. On June 4th, 2008, 6 days before Travis was
I
set
wonder
to
what
leave
kind
for
of.
Mexico, Jodi would once more show up unannounced. All we know for sure is that they had sex and took explicit pictures of each other using Travis's new camera. At roughly 5 p.m., Travis would get in the shower, and Jodi would begin taking pictures of him using the same camera. Then, moments after this picture was taken, Jodi would stab Travis a total of 27 times. She would also cut his throat and shoot him in the face. During the onslaught, Travis's camera took 2 accidental photographs. The first was taken as Jodi dropped it during the onset of the attack. The second was taken as she kicked it by mistake while moving Travis's body. It showed Jodi's foot and a fatally wounded or deceased Travis. The amount of time that passed from the 2 photographs was 62 seconds. Jodi then spent an estimated 45 minutes cleaning down the crime scene to make sure none of her DNA was left behind. This included wiping down the victim's body with a cup of water and a cloth. She also deleted the pictures from Travis's camera before throwing it in the washing machine. She would then drive back out into the desert and leave Travis a voicemail for the purpose of placing herself away from the crime scene and giving herself an alibi.
Go.
Jodi would then drive to another man's house in Utah by the name of Ryan Burns and stayed the night. He would later testify that nothing seemed off about Jodi's behavior, only that they kissed and engaged in sexual intercourse. Travis's body was discovered by Mimi and her friends 5 days later, the day before they were supposed to leave to Cancun together.
How long were you there trying to get into the house?
Just, a couple of minutes. I banged on the door, rang the doorbell over and over again. Nobody answered. I was scared
Oh,
that
God.
something might be happening to him.
Not
because
the
they knew
Maya
that he
echoes.
had a stalker. Travis's friend on the phone. So suggested that we go in through the garage and look for him in the house. And then as soon as they said that they saw blood, that there's blood everywhere, I stopped looking and said, he's dead. He's dead. And so immediately I called the police.
After the news of Travis's death broke the following day, Jody called the police and offered to help with the investigation. She was then transferred to the lead detective, Esteban Flores, of the Mesa Police Department. The most notable detail of the phone call was that Jody agreed to provide a sample of her DNA. Over the following month, forensics were able to uncover the deleted photos from Travis's camera, and despite her best efforts, discovered Jody's DNA all over the crime scene. During this time, oblivious to the evidence that was building against her, Jody would post multiple pictures of her and Travis on Facebook, alongside emotional messages to Travis himself. She even sent his family flowers and a letter expressing her grief over his death. The Mesa Police Department launched their case against Jody on July 15th, 41 days after the murder. Detective Flores would be the one to conduct her interrogation. He had spoken with her once over the phone and was present when she was fingerprinted and swabbed for DNA. The Siskiyou County Police arrested Jody at her grandparents' house at 7:35 a.m. and only said they had a warrant for her arrest without giving further information. She was placed in handcuffs and didn't once ask what she was being arrested for in the 6-minute drive to the local police station. What makes Jodi Arias stand out among the many cases in the realm of true crime is the manner in which she attempts to navigate the system. She seems to believe that if she presents herself in a certain way and adopts a very specific character with very specific traits, it will give her the best chance at evading the consequences of her actions. In her mind, this character is a soft-spoken, sweet-natured, God-fearing individual, yet to everyone else is quite possibly the most universally annoying person to ever abide in the history of existence.
I guess you weren't lying. Take that.
In the next moment, Jodi will hear Detective Flores approaching the room. She will then abruptly place her head on the table to make it appear as if she's sleeping. She will now notice the detective has instead walked past the room and then revert back to her regular sitting position. For whatever reason, Jodi wants to appear as if she's in a far calmer state than she actually is. She wants the detective to believe that she's relaxed enough to doze off, when she is in fact extremely alert and anticipating his arrival. She places her head back on the table to feign a placid state once more, and you'll notice her left shoulder hovers in what looks like a very uncomfortable position for just over a minute. She then hears the external door open, at which point she takes a deep breath and then fully rests onto the table.
I started hating Jodi for acting cute and bubbly for over 2 hours, even on the court, rather than hating her for being a murderer. Wait, what? For acting cute and bubbly for over 2 hours. Oh, you see, you started hating her for her fake ass attitude instead of for the murder.
I know exactly when it happened, when he was killed. I know a lot of details.
Jesus.
And just recently
Well, let's see how she plays out then.
I'll discuss it.
Oh, wow. Wow. So you figured out how to beat me, huh? So you've realized you need to back away from me, huh? Well played, well played.
She's been brought to a police station in handcuffs and now just told her arrest is
Yeah, pretty much.
An innocent person sitting in her position would want immediate clarification as to what exactly is going on. Jodi doesn't inquire further, just gently accepts to cooperate after being given a very vague...
You know what? As for that, I'm not gonna revive you and I'm gonna take all these kills. Ah.
And those details are known only by us and the person who did
Oh,
it.
it's life sample.
Okay, and that's one of the reasons I'm here, because I believe that you know some of these details, and I think you can help us.
I would love to help you in any way I can.
Because we're here at the police department, the sheriff's department here at Siskiyou County is complicated. And you're considered under arrest or detained. You're not free to go. Because police officers have to review your rights. I'm sure you've heard them on TV. You know, I have to read them off this little card here. Just allow them to explain them to you as we go, okay? And I think, you know, if there's a question that you have to ask me, don't feel comfortable, you can say no, you know, or you can elaborate as much as you want. That's completely up to you, it's at your speed. I don't want to pressure you.
Recorded at all, or should we?
No, I don't know if there's a recording or something.
I don't know if these are voice recorders. I noticed them. If they have video, they have audio, or batteries, or what?
I don't think they're on.
Hindsight allows us to recognize this is simply an attempt to appear innocent. She seems to think that if she appears confident enough to recommend the use of an outdated voice recorder, that it will seem as though she has nothing to hide. But it's just her talk. If the detective wasn't already certain of Jody's guilt, he would most certainly become suspicious of his own.
Yeah, I think
Jody's mind would be racing, yet she desperately wants her exterior self to appear calm. She's so focused on having this nonchalant disposition that she completely fails to realize her behavior doesn't match the situation whatsoever. She's in a state of hyperarousal while feigning a state of
Oh.
and the end result just looks very strange. It gives
Bada
reason
boom.
for her unusual infatuation with a voice recorder, and also for her oncoming sitting position, which really can't be described, only compared to a sea lion peeking over a rock.
What I want to do is just get to the bottom of it. Everybody wants to know, okay? And
Wheel gun.
you know, so I'm gonna ask you some questions. You can voluntarily answer them if you want. Okay, is that cool?
Yeah, that's fine.
There was some question about you being. Well, let's start with this. What have you been up to since Francis? What have you been doing?
Well, I've been working. I haven't been really working with people. There's not a whole lot here in this marketplace.
It's kind of small.
It's small here, and really that could be seen as an opportunity rather than a hindrance, because that just means the market is untapped in a large way. So I could have, if I wanted to. But
Did we miss an echo recorder?
I'm kind of like a deer in the headlights when it comes to pre-paid legal. I just have a fear of just approaching people.
You'll come to notice that Jody will go off on these unrelated tangents anytime she has the slightest chance to do so. It's a recurring theme in interrogations for when the suspect is facing serious charges. And the common theory is that it's an attempt at gaining a momentary escape from what is likely the most terrifying moment of their life. Going into detail about topics completely unrelated to
Oh
the
God.
situation
No!
essentially delays the
Bloodwing,
onset of the
why?
Forensic psychology views this as a form of denial. The detective subtly nudges her away from the theme of network marketing and onto the topic of Travis. She starts off with a Facebook post she made in his memory.
I realize looking back on it, it's more of like my dear Travis kind of letter. And so I took it down because, yeah, some of it was more personal. Not too personal, nothing inappropriate. I just felt funny. I think because I'm a photographer, I tend to communicate more through pictures, so I posted a ton of pictures that I have of them. And I have a ton more that I just can't access right now. And videos and things that I know his family would want.
She then explains how it's hard to talk about Travis's death with the guy she's now dating.
And we've been talking a lot, and we try not to talk about that because it's kind of like, ugh. And plus, Travis is my ex-boyfriend, but at the same time, he's my friend, so while I'm mourning my friend, how do you talk to your new potential possible maybe person that you might start dating about your friend being a abuser? Because it's kind of a gray area.
The detective knows she'll happily trail off until the morning comes, so he cuts her off and locks her into the situation at hand.
And I've talked to a lot of people, and everybody's point of view, you know, everybody is saying, I don't understand what happened to Travis. I don't know who killed him. And sometimes the simplest answers
Grazie.
are the correct ones.
One of the most fascinating parts of this interrogation is how long the detective allows Jody to cling on to hope. For the first 45 minutes, she will be terrified, yet still believe there's a chance she will be going home at the end of it. The detective will hint at her suspicions and culpability in a
That's gonna be
gradual
easy.
manner, yet not directly accuse her until a much later stage. Dangling the idea of hope above someone's head while simultaneously hinting at the grim future that awaits them would perhaps be considered cruel in those other circumstances. Yet on this occasion, it is tolerated for a tactical purpose, which is to allow for as much divulgence from the suspect as possible. Her fear will cause her to panic, not enough to the point where she completely locks up, but just enough so that she continuously tries to claw at her own salvation, and in the process will divulge information that will be extremely damaging to her defense later on.
And that's one of the reasons I started looking at you a little bit closer. And over the last month or so, I've gotten into Travis's life, talked to all his friends, his family. I got a really good understanding of who he is. And I got a very good understanding of your relationship with him. Obviously, you weren't boyfriend, girlfriend. You were still in this relationship. Which,
Does
you
his
know,
family know about that?
no, his family doesn't know.
I'm interested in protecting how he's remembered as well. And
Just for the purpose of integrated context, at Jody's trial, she would label Travis a sexual deviant, a domestic abuser, and a pedophile.
He truly abused her. And for some reason, he felt that the relationship between him and her was someone else. Couldn't stop it. I assume it's probably maybe the same way you felt about him, or maybe you didn't understand why he didn't believe it was happening.
no, I didn't think it was healthy either, spiritually at least, and probably emotionally, but mostly spiritually. And I think that kind of, once you have something that's not healthy spiritually, it filters through all aspects of your life.
Her dialogue alters from spirituality to her work history and then to her finances before moving on to her family. Bear in mind she wasn't asked about any of this.
Oh God, why? Why? Oh God. I know.
Baseball or cheerleading or
The way Mordecai is
Detective
just
nudges her back to
so
the
heartbroken.
subject
It breaks
of
my heart
Travis
too.
once more. He asks if the sexual element combined with his religion was the reason the relationship didn't work. Jody then takes it upon herself to recount her sex life history and simultaneously preach about her own devotion.
Dude, same. The first time when I came back to the game and I saw this again, I was low-key tearing up. But I was playing with the homies, so you know I couldn't let no tears fall.
Regardless of what the Bible says, and yes, I'm Christian, I just live my life by the 10 Commandments, and those are my rules. You know, thou shalt not this or that.
What? E-Tech Bollywan?
So I just used to joke about that. We did pray about it. I remember we knelt by his bed once, and surprisingly, he suggested it. Normally, you know, I would suggest that we pray before we go on a trip or before we eat if we're alone.
It was kind of unusual for him, huh?
Yeah, because he was very resistant to prayer. He's like, so I'd
He
say,
was very resistant to prayer.
Why don't you say a prayer? Why don't you say a prayer? Why don't you say a prayer? So we go back and forth. Jody, will you say a prayer? And I said, sure. And Travis was like,
The detective endures as much prayer talk as humanly possible before shifting the topic once more.
He was at a point in his life where he wanted to really start settling down. He felt like he needed to kind of grow up, you know, become a husband, become a father. Did you guys ever discuss possibly getting married or anything?
when we were dating, we
we did.
Okay.
Once we broke up, he brought it up. He actually proposed to me a lot of times, but he wasn't serious.
Let's move to after the breakup.
Oh, okay.
What kept you in Mesa at that point?
I actually moved to Mesa a few weeks after we broke up.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a time period you really wasn't seeing anybody, and then Mimi came. What did you think about her? And
I didn't know a lot about her. She seems like a really nice girl. He showed me her picture on Facebook. You know, I don't think she had a lot of pictures on there. He said that he's not sure why, but he's pretty sure that she could be it. And I was happy for him. I didn't find out about Lisa.
This conversation you had face to face with him?
Yeah, yeah, it was in his room. And he had his laptop, you know, it was on his bed.
Jody is desperately trying to make it appear as though her and Travis were on good terms. But this is just overkill. Jody was labeled the crazy stalker ex by all of Travis's friends, and even Travis himself. The idea that he would show and then discuss any potential future romances with Jody is ridiculous.
And I truly believe he does love her still.
Oh, he
but
does.
Travis had a, he's what you call a player. You know what that means. Yeah. He kind of pulls girls in. He was reluctant to make a commitment first off. And truly, he didn't think that you were marriage material. And I don't know why not. I mean, I see you. You're a wonderful girl. You're struggling. You're trying to make your way through life. And I don't see why you guys couldn't have made it.
I think we have very different philosophies in a lot of ways. We would argue about the dumbest things, and like there were so many times where I just couldn't wrap my mind around what I could, but I would try to get him to do the same for me. Like there was a time when I broke down on the way to LA once, and my car got a flat tire, so I had at the time roadside assistance because my car was still under warranty. And they went to take the car in to change the tire and realized that when they sold me the car, they didn't give me the wheel lock key. And I was kind of hungry at this dinner time.
Happen? Okay.
And the tow truck guy said,
¿Qué tengo a robar?
2 blocks down here, and there's a Jack in the Box there, and he was
Cobijas?
I said, is there an IHOP around? He's like, yeah, but it's kind of like 5 miles back in the other direction.
Pues. Yeah, you're right.
I'll drive you there if you want.
¿Qué pues?
And I was like, he's like this short Mexican guy, and he seemed really harmless, and I was like, okay. And he, you know, and I asked him about his life, and he had a wife and kids, and so he wasn't flirting.
The travels of Jody and the sweet Mexican continues on
Caso
for
Saab,
another 2
he
minutes.
successfully
The
secured a
detective
way
then brings
past
Jody's
the first
attention
obstacle
what
to
he
control
already
Cora
believes
Angel.
was the trigger motive for the murder.
So, moving over to his trip to Cancun that he was going to. When did you first find out about that he was going with Mimi?
Oh, I found out about that at his memorial services on Monday. It was the Monday night.
You know there's loot down there, right?
You didn't know he was taking Mimi?
I didn't.
You just gotta go down there and then go back, and there's loot down there.
Right. Yeah. Well, unfortunately.
No, you missed it. You gotta go this way.
Before, and I told him, look, if you want to take somebody else, it's fine, but I have something to tell you. I don't look at you that way. I don't look at you as a boyfriend.
Alright, let's go to 1,000 Cuts.
The detective essentially stated
let me buy
Travis
SD
was
actually.
friend-zoned by Mimi, but he still invited her instead of Jody anyway.
What kept you to him? I don't understand.
Well, moving is expensive for one. So once I was there, I was kind of stuck there.
But why do you continue to go back to him? You know what he wants. You know that it's not healthy, but yet you continue to go back, and it brings us to this point where we are now.
Part of my perspective now has to do with the fact that I'm going through.
Whoa, okay.
With my bishop, and he's given me, certain scriptures to read and ponder and pray about.
Preacher Joseph urges for another.
That's not fair. It's not fair.
The detective then interjects and starts getting more confrontational with the facts about Jody's behavior towards Travis.
And obviously, you guys kept this relationship hidden from everybody else, and nobody really knew about it.
Well,
There were some
I will
people
get you back.
who I talked to and said, yeah, they continue to have a relationship even after they broke up. And there are others who are saying that you had become obsessive with him, to the point to where you would go into his house when he wasn't there, or when you were invited, and he would talk to people saying she just kind of showed up and I don't know what to believe, but what's wrong with that?
oh, that must have been early on, because there were a couple times when
Wait.
we established a rule early on, just don't,
Where do we
don't
go?
come over enough. He said, you can come over anytime, but I need your night first.
The detective then starts ramping up the pressure and brings Jody's alibi and road trip into the discussion.
Here? Oh yeah. Or not? What the heck?
You took a trip to Salt Lake City. Which route did you take from there?
I was supposed
No
to get
shot.
on 15. And
Alright. Actually
yeah,
stuck.
And
Alright,
just
that's
never
fine.
got off the 15.
Where did you end up?
For a while I was lost, and I'm not above sleeping in the car, so I slept for a while. I'm a heavy sleeper and I sleep a lot, so.
But you were on the 15 for a while, and you ended up getting off the 15 somewhere.
Yeah, I looked at a map, and I'm pretty sure I know where I went. Can I draw you a map?
Sure. So this trip took you a little over 48 hours. So. I have a problem with this trip.
Well, I went first to.
Yeah, I know you went down here. I've gone over this trip over and over in my life. There's still 20 some odd hours. Even if you pulled over to sleep. A couple of times.
Did I tell you that I got stranded?
Yeah. Pretty much. If you slept for 10 hours.
I only slept for like
Here and here, it would still leave 18 some odd hours for something else. Okay. This is what people are focusing on. This is true. That you took. Because they're saying she left, she didn't get to till Thursday. Wednesday? Some trials just do. I pulled your cell records. Your cell phone is turned off. Can you hear me?
Well, I didn't turn it off physically, but
And then magically you found your charger.
it was under the bathroom seat, passenger side, and it was when I was.
When you were lost, you couldn't have maybe pulled over and found it, or?
Well, I did finally start looking when I was stranded. I wasn't pulled over when I was lost.
Detective Flores explains to Jody multiple times over how the trip doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And whether it's feigned naivety or that she literally doesn't understand the concept of time and distance, she pretends to be confused by the allegation rather than actually confront it. This goes on for 3 minutes before the detective confronts Jody with the evidence of the photographs on Travis's camera.
But I don't think you're being completely honest with me about that trip.
I honestly got lost. It's bad timing.
Were you in Travis's house?
I was getting home. I was completely confused. There's no one there.
No.
Dating.
What if I could show you a picture? Would that change your mind?
I wasn't there.
Be honest.
I was not at Travis's house. Was not.
You're at Travis's house.
I was not at Travis's house. I was not.
Which, here's pictures. And we know which picture. I'll show them. Okay. So, what I'm asking you is for you to be honest with me. I know you were there.
Are you sure those pictures aren't from another time?
Positive. Remember I told you about the camera?
Mm-hmm.
The cards in the camera. Remember I told you that thought it was a story. I didn't want to tell you the truth. And I have pictures of you in Travis's bedroom with Travis, pictures of him, and it's obvious you guys are having sex. You photos of each other, right? You and Thompson,
Are you sure it's me? Yeah, because I was not there.
it's you. And you know it's you. I know all the details of this case. The only thing I don't know is why. Why did you choose to visit Travis that day? And why did you do what you did? Why? You did. You hurt him. That's why we're here. That's why I flew up here. Because I needed to talk to you about this. I can just arrest you and throw you in jail, but I want to know why. Why did you do this to him?
I didn't hurt Travis. He's done so much for me.
I know you took pictures of him in the shower. Just before death.
I don't think he would allow that.
And the camera actually took a couple of photos by accident during the time he was being killed.
Help.
It's time for you to just come out and
I didn't
tell me.
know. I did not hurt Travis. I did not hurt Travis. I wouldn't do that to him.
The detective then goes on to explain the DNA evidence collected at the crime scene, which includes Jody's blood mixed with Travis's blood, Jody's hair, and Jody's bloody palm print.
You either had blood on your hands, or you touched the wall. Whether it was blood on the wall, or you touched blood.
Could my palm print have already been there when I touched it?
He's asking him for an explanation on her behalf.
I did not hurt Travis.
If you want, I can show you some pictures. Do you want to see pictures of him?
Part of me does.
Ah, yeah. Facing McShooty.
No, there's more than curiosity. I wanted to know how he died.
We can keep playing these games. I'm not gonna leave you. It's over.
Could it have been my blood from the
Your
door?
image is not important. Satan blessed your life.
If I'm found guilty, I don't have that. I'm not guilty. I didn't hurt Travis. If I hurt Travis, I'm okay. It just seems so impossible. I want to see it. I want to know. I mean, I'm not a murderer, but I guess if I were to do that, I would wear gloves or something. Okay, let's say for a second that I did it.
Ah, I gotta shoot facing McShooty.
I did it. I mean,
No, I shot him in the leg.
Motive is there. The jealousy issue.
but I wasn't. I wouldn't even say I was jealous. I mean, there may have been some jealousy there, but
And what
I
is
think
it?
if
What
anyone,
caused this?
I think if anyone Travis was jealous, but
That's not what everybody else says. I can prove you were there. I can prove it. But what I don't have is I don't have answers on why it happened. Or, maybe something just got out of hand. Maybe things got out of hand.
did you find the gun? Maybe that would help.
Jody, just play the music. Take a little break. Let me figure out what you should do. Because the best thing for you to do is to tell me the truth. It's so important that you tell me why this occurred, what was going
Guys, that is so annoying.
Be right back.
Tickets, I'm not a murderer.
Alright. Stay alive. I'm coming back. Alright. At least he didn't regain all his health.
It's a Glock.
Who's not mine?
Jim. Oh. Just photos. And I want to hear
If Travis were here today, he would tell you that it wasn't me.
Oh my god, it's so bad, bro.
My job is to speak for Travis, right?
If Travis were here, he would tell you I didn't murder him. Bruh.
Where's that one? Graham?
Is he naked? In the shower?
Yep.
Jody is then shown one of the pictures that was taken by accident while she was in the process of murdering Travis.
It's your foot, Jody. These are your parents. No, it's off color because you did enhance it.
This is his bathroom. That is not my foot.
Couldn't even recognize Travis. You've been there so long. Do you have any recent cuts that are healing?
Well, my cat scratches me. Little things. These are all her work. You can see. This is her. That's her. I've got scars. She's a feral.
Enough about the cat. There's no doubt I'm gonna get you ready. You can go into the face. Then we do I have a solid case against you. As cold as this is. Or I can present it to the judge with your explanation.
If I don't go, see what happens. So what's the price?
Sheesh.
Depends on your situation. You show remorse for it. And part of that remorse is coming clean. Somebody doesn't come clean.
God.
I don't see any remorse.
Oh my. I'm so sorry. Alright, now I commit seppuku.
Unfortunately, you're gonna have to face the consequences.
If I did that, I'd be fully ready to face the consequences. I'm not really for things like, I'm all for the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill. Okay? Just can't. I didn't kill Travis. I just didn't. I did not take his life.
You need
For
to
sure.
come out and tell me why it's
I'm impeccable then.
I will not accept any other excuses. I will just move on with my investigation, with my final report, submitting all the conclusions and all the evidence. And we can just let a judge and a jury decide. We can leave it in the
What
hands of
about
a
a lie
jury.
detector test?
We can do that. That's fine.
Would that help me at all?
I mean, you can't use them in court, but
Well, then there's no point in taking it.
you took a knife to him.
This girl is pretty annoying. She's like the Karen of murderers, bruh. Literally the Karen of murderers. But like, if I am guilty, what happens to me?
I've never been angry, that angry at him. Not enough for that. I've been so far angrier at other people, at other ex-boyfriends.
Then tell me who could have done this. Who did this?
I don't know, but if I go to trial for this, and if I'm convicted for this, whoever did this is going to be sitting very pretty somewhere. Glad that it wasn't him.
And it's my job to make sure that
Pack a bowl. Bowl.
but I don't see it as a person.
Of that Mary Jane.
Travis has done a lot for me.
You know what a bowl is?
He introduced the gospel to me.
Yeah.
Why is everybody saying that you are capable of hurting him? Everybody says it.
You don't know what a bowl is?
It's
It's
I don't even hurt spiders.
it's basically where you put the weed, yeah, and smoke it.
The dog once.
You get it.
I was a freshman in high school,
Yes, sir.
and I love
As if you weren't a kid with your roll of cig.
we had this dog, his name was Doggy Boy, and my parents, until this dog that they have now, have never been able to, and I don't mean just them.
Well,
we as
shit,
a
I'll
family
puff
have
puff,
never been able
and
to
then I'll
care for a
pass.
dog
We'll both
properly, so
puff
it's
puff, and then we'll both pass.
to be consistent.
To save you the oncoming ramble about Doggy Boy the dog, she lightly tapped him with her foot for tearing open the trash, and she's felt so bad ever since that it changed her entire worldview on the animal kingdom. She now apologizes to the dog, through the detective, who's conducting her interrogation for first-degree murder.
And I need to apologize
Alright.
to him. I know it sounds weird, my relationship with animals. It's kind of like they're like people too, you know, they have souls.
What you need to do is you need to apologize to Travis.
Park it up.
But you just refuse.
Listen,
I can't help
Cheers.
you anymore if you're not gonna,
Ding.
if you're not gonna help yourself.
he asked me
I can't. Baby.
It's fascinating to observe how fast she can switch from one emotion to the next once she realizes a particular strategy hasn't worked. The attempt at elevating her character by expressing how much she cares for spiders and pets hasn't seemed to have any effect on the detective. So she then switches her disposition from sorrowful to analytical, as she once more tries to manipulate his perception of her.
if I did anything, it had anything to do with his death anymore.
Alright.
It's not if. To me.
I wouldn't.
It's not if. It's not if at all.
My bad, I don't really like the smoke being in my lungs too long.
I would be more than remorseful.
So maybe something is blocking out your head.
I don't think so. I mean, I tend to write everything down. I just understood the other stuff. And just, the true definition of sanity is dedication to reality at all costs.
You are facing
Ooh, expert grenadier. I like that.
That's the reality. And once you realize that, I think you'll be better for it.
I've had worse issues with other people. They're all still alive. I'm still friends with my ex-boyfriends. They're all still alive.
You know, I've been doing this a long time. And there's one thing that I
Pretty doo-doo.
can never do. Ever since the first one. There's an old saying that someone's just not acting right. You're not acting right from day one. It's not acting right. You're acting like somebody else.
So,
Alright, and once we meet Fuck, what's the name? Was we meet Brick right here? I'm gonna probably hop off. I've been streaming for a few hours now.
Within the
I'm probably
first
taking a nap.
30 seconds to a minute of a conversation, I know when somebody's acting right. There's a certain.
How did I act it
It's
right,
not
do you
like
think?
it's not like TV.
Is it because I'm not ready?
It's not because of that.
What is it? Tell me I can change it.
It's obviously you can't change it.
No, I'm not ready.
You're sincere in the way you're acting.
Well, how is it?
You're just not telling the truth.
How is it different?
After Jody failed her attempts to extract inside knowledge on the best way to be told when people appear innocent, she then attempts to explain why she hasn't been able to appear innocent.
It's not that I'm not being honest. The reason I hesitate is because what is a symptomatology psychologically? Is I think of the butterfly effect. And so
Bruh.
you could say
What are
that the
you
guy
talking about?
when getting out of the gas station, but actually if you just like in movies, there's some movies where it's like this affected this, which affected this, which affected this, at the end of this.
I know if you've never met him, he probably would still be fine.
Got him. Got his ass. Got her ass.
I just can't admit something that I didn't do. If it would help my face and give me an easier sentence, I know people can't get those things.
Mr. Goliath, we're fighting here.
I wish that I had.
That was rude.
Sorry. There's just no reason. There's just no reason.
There's no good reason, my son. There's never a good reason. I just need this.
This seems to be the moment Jody fully confronts the reality of her situation. The anguish she has over her own fate will become visible, yet she will now disguise this anguish as grief over Travis's death. She does this by posing a question.
Hooray.
How many times was Travis stabbed?
No.
More than I want to remember.
Why? What the fuck? What the hell?
I think you're feeling the reality in the moment.
But it was funny.
His family is gonna.
You're a monster.
Mad at Travis.
Alright, let's end the gameplay here.
Ever want to fix them.
All I know is that I need a story or else it's just cold. It's so cold.
One more duel.
But without the truth, I can't paint another picture.
Wait, no, wait. Did you expect it yet? Hold on.
And if you want that prosecutor, and I've met him, then you don't want him painting that picture.
I have to maintain my innocence. I can't admit.
It says your enemies will accept at this time.
There's just no
Well, I
reason.
have more work to do.
Why are you
Can
running?
you give me a rundown of what's gonna happen from here when you leave?
Yeah, you're,
Like, just today, for example.
well, they're probably going to take you across the street to the county jail. You'll be processed for
This is a really trivial question.
Let's go! Let's go! Technical dub! Technical dub, baby! Counts. 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 Yeah! What a way to end off the stream.
It's just procedure.
Well, you wrote a bad check.
Wait, I don't even have my skill down. Oh. And that's 2 out of 3. That's 2 out of 3. What can I say? What can I say? I can see clearly now the rain is gone. I wanted to rev you for extra respect. Disrespect. Nope. Nope. Sorry. Sorry. If you wanna get your revenge, hop on another stream some other time, okay? Fine, one more. One more. Wait. No longer valid. Alright, let's go. Alright, I have cooldown, you have cooldown. Okay. Okay. Okay, that's just not fair. That's just actually not fair. Whatever. You see this? You see this? What? Ever. That's the one too. Nah. No, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I just can't.
16 hours before she was taken back to the Siskiyou County Sheriff's Office. Her second interrogation commenced at approximately 9 p.m.
Let's go. Alright. Thanks for dropping by the stream, Ange. I'll catch you some other time. GG's. See ya. Jibber Jabber, you're back, bro. I'm about to end the stream. We'll play sometime, Jibs.
Just go ahead and put your hands down at the waist.
Paladins is crossplay, right?
The game plan for this second interrogation.
We'll talk about it later. Thanks for watching, Jibs. Thanks for watching, and
will now have a greater
I'll see you guys later.
The
Deuce.
initial tactic is for detective